Good evening and welcome to the March 27th Board of Selectmen meeting. I ask you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will start our meeting with the reading of the agenda. We'll go over our February 27th meeting minutes. We'll then move on to community relations, announcements, and open forums. We have 4 items under appointments and resignations. We have an appointment for the Cultural Council, an appointment for the Lakes and Ponds Committee. We have reappointments for special police officers and auxiliary officers, and reappointments for the Inspector of Animals. We have a lot of scheduled appointments tonight. For 6:40 appointment with O'Malley's Truck and Auto, a 6:45 appointment for Taggart's Package Store, a 6:50 appointment with Russell Jennings, a 7 o'clock appointment with Police Chief Maxfield, and a 7:15 appointment for Chapter 61B for King Road, and finally a 7:30 appointment with the Planning Board for the Town Planner position. Under new business, we have 3 items. Number 1 is a request for a common vicular license, the original Dresser Hill Restaurant. Number 2 is a Ribbon Rockets, a request for a toll road. And number 3 is the Board of Selectmen 2017 Annual Town Report. Under old business, we have 3 items. Number 1 is an update on solar from Mr. Meskis. Number 2 is the Board of Selectmen goals and policy objectives for civic participation with schools. And number 3 is the annual town meeting. We will be considering draft annual town meeting warrant requests and closing the warrant. We'll then move on to community reports, Board of Selectmen policy reviews, the student select persons report, the town administrator's report, and finally, any other business that was unknown at the time of posting. And our next regular meeting will be April 10th. We will be going into executive session and exiting executive session solely for the purpose of adjournment. With that, what are the board's wishes with the February 27th meeting minutes?
Motion to approve?
No, make a motion.
Second.
We're in a second discussion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Abstain.
Chair votes aye. And motion passes with 3 ayes and 1 abstention. We'll now move on to community relations, announcements, and open forums. From the Office of the Town Clerk, absentee ballots are now available for the special town election on April 3rd. You may send an absentee ballot application found on the Town Clerk's website at townofcharlton.net to the Town Clerk's office, or you may stop in to the Town Clerk's office to vote or have a ballot mailed to you. Household Hazardous Waste Day will be held Saturday, March 31st from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at 165 Barefoot Road in Southbridge, Mass. A proof of residency is required. A special election for the override will be held on Tuesday, April 3rd from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Heritage School. Charlton Rabies and Microchipping Clinic will be held at the Charlton Municipal Animal Shelter at 15 Old Town Road on Saturday, April 7th from 1 to 3 p.m. An all boards, departments, commissions meeting will be held on Tuesday, April 17th at 6:30 in the Senior Center. Charlton North Fest will be held on Saturday, April 28th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Charlton Town Common. The Bay Path Educational Foundation benefit, the 12th annual golf tournament will be held on May 12th from 1 o'clock at the Heritage Country Club. Please register by April 27th. Please visit baypath.net for more information. There will be a town election on Saturday, May 5th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Heritage School, followed by a town meeting on Monday, May 21st at 7 p.m. at the Charlton Middle School. There will also be a Charlton Candidates Night held on Wednesday, April 18th, starting at 6:30 in the Charlton Library in Dexter Hall. Are there any other announcements?
To the chair.
Ms. Grandowski.
I have 2 things. This coming Saturday, March 31st, will be the annual Shepherd Hill prom dress swap from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Tickets are $5 and dresses will cost $15 each. And Shepherd Hill will be hosting a Women in STEM and Science and Engineering Fair on April 5th from 6 to 7:30 p.m.
Wonderful, thank you. Are there any other announcements? Is there anyone here for open forum? Please make sure you state your name and address for the record, please.
Lori Degnan, 106 Osgood Road.
Karen Spiewak, 90 Osgood Road. Good evening.
Good evening.
We are here tonight because we have submitted a citizen's petition for a zoning moratorium a temporary moratorium on the construction of large-scale ground-mounted solar array systems for the time of 1 year. We are hoping that we'll have your support and maybe a co-sponsor with us.
And again, as Lori mentioned, we are really looking to have your support, and possibly, if you would consider sponsoring the article, it would be fantastic. And I just want to stress how this is not, we're not saying we're trying to stop anything. We're simply saying we want to put this moratorium in place so we have time to put reasonable regulations in place, like just about every other city and town across the state has done. So again, we thank you for your time, but we also hope you had time to review the article, and would like to know if you indeed would co-sponsor or even sponsor that article.
Ms. Craver?
So, as you notice on the agenda, there is the warrant, and they'll be going through every one of the warrant articles. The warrant article that you have, that you're speaking of, is a petition that came in, so it's already in the warrant under the petitions, and they'll be discussing that after. So they actually have not seen it, and they're gonna see it tonight.
Okay. Should we stay to support?
I would
Okay.
recommend that, yeah.
Okay.
It's towards the end of the agenda, so probably won't be able to get to that until after 7:30.
That's fine.
Maybe well after.
All
But
right.
please be here as a resource. We'd appreciate that.
We will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here for open forum? Mr. Desto?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is unusual for me. Normally, the teachers put me right in the front row when I was a student, so having to come all the way from the back was unusual, but I'll be very brief. I see that you have a very ambitious agenda tonight. I simply wanted to just make a couple of comments and a couple of announcements, all related to the special election that's coming up on April 3rd. First, I want to thank all of those citizens of Charlton and those from up on this table here on the stage who were able to participate with us on the 22nd at Charlton Middle School in an open forum that we think was pretty productive. We were able to answer a lot of questions, and it was great to see the interest in the community. So I want to thank people for that. If anybody did not have an opportunity to come out but had wanted to, and we didn't have as many people come out in Dudley, so we're going to be available again this Thursday night on short notice at Dudley Middle School from 6 to 8. I'll make myself available, as well as the Director of Finance and Operations, and like I said, it's a last chance for anybody who wasn't able to make the first two to come out and face-to-face have their questions answered, and we'll try our best to explain the situation. I also wanted to, you've already done a great job with it, Mr. Chairman, but I wanted to just mention the election again, just so that, much recognition as possible, is this coming Tuesday, April 3rd, from 8 to 8 at the Heritage School. And I want to, on behalf of the school committee, one last time, face-to-face, say thank you to the selectmen for your support of this election. I think everybody here knows that this is a critical item for not only the school district, but it affects the town very much as well. And so the school committee really appreciates the unanimous support. And I would answer any questions that anybody might have at this time. If not, I'm perfectly happy to move on and let you go about your business.
Just a quick question. If someone wouldn't be able to make those meetings or does have a question, is there a website or an online resource they can go to?
Yes, there is. If you go, look, they should just email me. Let's just, bottom line, gdesto@dcrsd.org. Very early on in the process, we put a mechanism on our website where they could click if they had a question, but it's a little bit, it kind of adds 3 steps to the process. At this point, if people still have questions, they can either call or email me, and I'm glad to answer them.
Thank you. Yes.
Through the
Mr.
chair, I believe on the Town of Charlton homepage also is the financial report that was done for the school system and commissioned by the Town of Dudley, the Town of Charlton, and the Dudley Charlton Regional School District. I believe that if anybody has any questions besides, what you want to talk to Mr. Desto about, I think it's a very good background on why we are at the override, so.
Thank you, and that reminded me, if I may, Mr. Chairman, that also on our website, if you are looking at the website, you'll see a bunch of pictures of kids. and then right below that, it says FY 2019 budget information, and you click on that, you come to a thing that says Mr. Desto's budget presentation, a very creative title. And it's a presentation that I put together with a lot of help from a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me, and I think it kind of takes people through the process. So if they wanted a pretty quick glance at what the issue is relative to the school district, that would be a very important document to check out as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Noble?
Just one more question.
Sure.
Is there anything else we can do to help support the schools during this time and through this budgetary process?
I think with a week to go before the override, for the most part, everybody's already doing what we would request, which is that it's just important for us that people know that while the ballot question will indicate money for the district assessment, it's very much going to impact the town as well. I think there are probably still some people out there who think that this is just for the schools and are not aware that every dollar for us is a dollar for you, because there's a state formula that requires you to pay so much no matter what.
Right.
And so it's simply a matter of making the pool of resources bigger so that we can all do the things that we need to do.
Because a rising tide lifts all boats.
Among other things, yeah, absolutely. And
Thank you.
so it's just important to keep spreading the word that this is a joint effort and it's going to help us all.
Okay.
Are there any more questions? Mr. Desto, thank you so much.
Might
for
I
coming.
add
Oh,
one more
sure,
thing, Mr.
please.
Chairman, and I apologize, I'm going a little lengthy, but I wanted to say, in case I am not at another meeting in April, Mr. Swenson, thank you so much for your support of the schools over the years. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you again. And once again, a final reminder, or another reminder, that Tuesday, April 3rd, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Heritage School will be the special election for the override.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here for open forum? Seeing none, we will then move on to announcements, appointments, and resignations. Our first appointment is for the Cultural Council. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. As you're aware, the Cultural Council is in need of members. Attached is a talent bank form from Cedric Flower seeking to be appointed to the Cultural Council. This appointment is for 3 years. Each member of the Cultural Council can serve a maximum of 2 consecutive terms or a total of 6 years. After the terms are over, they must remain off the council for 1 year interval before serving additional terms. I would recommend the board make the appointment.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. What are the wishes of the board?
Through the chair,
Ms. Noble?
I recommend that we appoint Cedric Flower to the Cultural Council for a term of 3 years.
Second.
Thank you. Motion, 2 seconds. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 2 is an appointment for the Lakes and Ponds Committee. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Attached is a talent bank form from Wayne Marquise seeking to be appointed to the Lakes and Ponds Committee. The Lakes and Ponds Committee feels Mr. Marquise would be a great asset and would ask the board to make the appointment.
Thank you.
I would recommend the board make the appointment.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. What are the wishes of the board?
Through the chair.
Mr.
I
McGrath?
make a motion that we appoint Wayne Markey to the Lakes and Ponds Committee.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 3, reappointments for the special police officers and auxiliary officers. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Attaches a memo from Police Chief Maxfield stating that as they continue to reorganize and reevaluate the needs of the police department, one area that needs to be addressed is the open-ended appointments of the non-union special police and auxiliary police personnel. He is asking the board to end all current appointments at the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, 2018, for the members that are listed in your memo. He will submit a list to those being reappointed prior to July 1st, 2018 for the next fiscal year.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're just trying to refresh the pool, as it were. We've had some people on there open-ended for a long time that aren't participating. It would benefit the town and the agency if I had the ability to come back before you each year and reappoint those who are volunteering and participating as they agreed to when they first got appointed. So I'm asking that that everybody on the roster, their appointment expire this June 30th, and I will, of course, bring back to you the names of those that I wish to be reappointed for July 1st, sir.
Perfect. Thank you. And what are the wishes of the board?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Item number 4, reappointments for the Inspector of Animals.
Yes, sir. Attached is notification by the Division of Animal Health that the animal inspector's term expires April 30th, 2018. Also attached are recommendations from the Chief of Police and the Board of Health Director recommending the appointment. You are asked to make the nomination appointment of Ann Salou as the animal inspector. The term of this appointment will run from May 1st, 2018 until April 30th, 2019. Once the nomination is made, we will notify the state who will make the actual appointments, and I would recommend you make the nomination.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. What are the wishes of the board?
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath.
I make a motion that we reappoint Ann Salou as Inspector of Animals for the town of Charlton.
Thank you.
A second.
Motion and second. Any discussion on the motion?
Just quickly,
Yep, Ms. Noble?
Nominating.
Are we nominating or are we appointing? Because it sounds to me like we're asked to make a nomination
Okay.
appointment.
I will change my motion to nominate.
Thank
And I'll
you.
amend
All
my
right,
second.
motion and second have been amended for nomination. Thank you, Ms. Noble. Is there any discussion on the amended motions? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you very much. All right, now the fun stuff. We'll move to our first scheduled appointment. That's a 6:40 appointment for the O'Malley Truck and Auto Incorporated for our 50th anniversary. Before I have Ms. Craver read the memo and ask O'Malley to please come on up. And I'd like to recognize that we have some special guests in the room tonight. We have Representative Peter Durant, Representative Paul Frost, Senator Ann Goby. I ask you also please come up.
So you are correct, Mr. Chair, this is the fun part. I had an opportunity to have a conversation with Mr. O'Malley, and we were talking out in front of his establishment and looked up, and there was this banner that said, open 50 years the business had been in, and he was telling me some stories about it, and I was just amazed. And one of the things that I know the Board of Selectmen has as a goal has been to economic development and to really recognize and thank those citizens that have been here. So without further ado, I just really wanted to say great. So that I was notified that he was celebrating his 50th year in business in the town of Charlton. So the board has invited him here.
Thank you. So I know we all have some presentations to present, but I know that some members like to say a couple words.
Through the chair. A couple of things. A small business is very, very hard to nurture and even make it 25 years, never mind 50 years, Tom. And I think that the way you have invested yourself in the community, giving back, you sponsored teams on every field, I think, and all the other things that you do for the citizens of town that make this the community that we are. I first met you many, many years ago when you had the fire, and you'd come down to Package Steel Buildings to pick up some parts that you needed for your building in the rebuilding process. I don't know how you did it then,
I sometimes wonder.
Yeah, it is. It's devastating when you have something like that you've put so much time into and it gets destroyed. Yet you persevered and you've grown the business, you employed quite a few people down there, and you do a very good job.
Thank you.
I think some of the things that people miss, and I'm going to tell one anecdotal story. It had snowed out, and I had stopped in front of Tom's business on a Sunday morning, and a gentleman on the other side of the road had run out of gas. And Tom, knowing the way the road is, first he was very concerned about the person, being in danger of getting hit. And second, he ran right in and got a gas can out of the shop and told the guy, fill your car up, run down to the gas station down the street and fill the can up and bring it back to me. And Tom, that's what makes you special. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Swanson?
I'll just be very quick, please.
We're here to embarrass you, Tom.
All right, good luck. I first met Tom when I was running the girls' softball league in town. And when I took it over, I got a list of people who had donated sponsorship signs every year. And there was a list of a handful of people that could always be counted on every year to sponsor the teams. And Tom was right on that list, right at the top of that list, and was always a huge supporter of all the youth programs in town that I was involved with. And anytime we ever went to anything for support, there was never a question. He just stepped up and has been a great member of the community. So from that perspective, thank you and congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'd like to open up to our representatives. We'll start with Senator Goby. If you have anything you'd like to say and present, please do it so.
I'll be happy to. On behalf of the Senate, I wanted to give you a little something for, 50 years is a long time, huh?
Yeah, it is.
My dad had a two-bay service station, and it's hard when you're in business for yourself. You know, you don't take holidays off, and I know when you're getting going, you don't really trust anybody else to take over for you. And I'm sure, you know, grease-stained hands put a lot of food on the table and clothes on the back of families and the folks that work for you. You know, it's not, you're not just taking care of that one person, you're taking care of a whole family, you know? And that means a lot. And I know how important small businesses are to a community. We just heard some of the stories, and I'm sure all the folks here probably have an O'Malley story, right? So on behalf of the Senate, Mr. O'Malley,
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it very
Yeah,
much.
absolutely.
Representative Frost, Representative Durant, I know that you have something from the House possibly.
All right. So, Tom, I want to echo the sentiments that we've heard already so far. Being in business for 50 years is just an incredible accomplishment. I had my own business in the 80s and 90s for 13 years, and I know how difficult it is to make payrolls, to keep food on the table, and to keep things moving forward. So the fact that you've been able to do it for 50 years is just an incredible accomplishment. And also, and I think Rick had mentioned it as well as John, being part of this community, being a company that gives back to the community, it means so much to this town, it means so much to this area. And so from my standpoint, you know, I want to thank you for all that you've done. I have a citation here to present from the House of Representatives for your 50 years of business, signed by the Speaker of the House, myself, and Representative Paul Frost as well.
Before I present our recognition, a quick anecdote from when I was younger. I used to do in-town soccer, and I used to have O'Malley Truck and Auto on my jersey. I'm not sure if I want to say it made me better, but I think it did, so I appreciate that, and it definitely was, you know, it's I want to say last week. It was like a year ago. It was just, you know, and something I never thought I would be, you know, one day signing and presenting this, that, you know, and I didn't know back then how much of a ingrained you are in Charlton and help make Charlton what it is. And I'm proud to present a certificate from the Board of Selectmen for your 50 years.
Oh, thank you very much.
Let's get a picture with everybody.
Okay.
I'd like to get one for the town report. If we can get something that says. How about this?
Everybody's lining up. Can I just get those?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we'll go on the other, we'll go on the other side. We'll even out.
Squeeze it in. Everyone get cozy.
Get cozy. Beautiful is good.
So now we've gone from driving to drinking.
Any last comments for Mr. O'Malley? Seeing none, thank you again, Mr. O'Malley, for being a part of this community, and hopefully we'll see you again in 10 years. And as one of my colleagues just said, we'll, as we move on to our second second scheduled appointment for Ted's Package Store. I have Ted come on up for some recognition and maybe some light roasting. As Ms. Noble just quipped before, we first had driving, now we have some drinking. The only time we're having those two together is okay. I'll turn it over to Senator Goby to lead us off.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I was waiting for you guys to start saying a few words. One thing I want to say, I haven't seen any other select board do this. I think it's really nice that you've chosen to do this and to recognize the businesses, and because it means an awful lot. And, who hasn't been to Ted's? I didn't know you sold anything else except the liquor. Okay. But even when you were doing your expansion, I think people know they could have gone anywhere. Any community would have welcomed them in, and you chose to stay here and to expand your base here in Charlton, and that means an awful lot. Plus, it's only 5 minutes from my house. So on behalf again of the Senate for your 40 years, so that's a long time. When you go into, and it's nice because you employ a lot of younger people too, and it teaches them about a job, about respect, being able to deal with people. And you've really taught a lot of younger people how to act in a business sense, and it's made them better people too. And I'm sure that they've really appreciated that, because that means a lot to them folks.
Thank you.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Durant, Representative Frost.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, to you, the members of the board. Appreciate you including myself, Representative Durant, Senator Goby on this occasion, and I too want to commend you all for taking the time out of your meeting to recognize small businesses here in the community that have obviously made decades and decades long commitment to the town, and as just mentioned, could easily have opened their shop somewhere else or expanded somewhere else or moved somewhere else. So I do want to congratulate you and thank you for your dedication and commitment, not just for having your business here in this community, like mentioned previously, and I think for you as folks as well. I see your name everywhere around town. I mean, I believe I've seen it at the softball field as well,
Yeah.
right? Yep. And and by the way, I do help run a softball program in Auburn, so I'll be taking anybody that wants to sponsor. No, just kidding. But no, not kidding about the softball. But kidding about taking any advertisers. But I do want to say thank you very much for all you do in the community, and for being involved, for caring, and for providing a place of employment for folks here in Charlton, and of course contributing to the tax rolls. So thank you. God bless you, and I hope you have another 40 years of success here, and I probably won't be here, but Joe will, and he'll remember the days. And so on behalf of myself and Representative Peter Durant, we want to offer this citation to Ted's Package Store on your 40th year of doing business in the town of Charlton, and it is signed by me and Representative Peter Durant, and signed by the Speaker of the House. Congratulations to you both.
Thank you very
Many
much.
more years of great success.
I know the name is Ted's, but the whole Murkowski family, it's been a journey together, and it's been amazing to see everyone working so hard and so close to make the whole dream a reality. I remember also when I was young, I just grew up and it was just let's go to Ted's, or we'll get a grinder at Ted's, or before going to karate at the old mill, going to that weird chicken machine that dispensed those toys, is something that, a memory that helped make Charlton, and it's just amazing.
It's a parrot.
A parrot? It's just a colorful chicken. But just, it's amazing that just, two businesses tonight that helped make Charlton, celebrating two really important milestones. So I'm very happy on the behalf of the Board of Selectmen to present a certificate of recognition for your 40th year of business.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
And before you sit down, I ask for a group picture, please.
I am gonna tell a Ted anecdote.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, no. He's not getting away with it.
Probably have more than I do. I've got a few, but I'm gonna limit it.
I'm coming.
Do you want to hold the certificates there? That would be good. Just spread them out a little bit, and I'm just gonna get a picture of that first, please. Thank you.
Anya, get in here.
Come on.
Come sit in Frost won't bite.
Not hot. All right, great, congratulations.
Oh, where you going? Please have a seat.
No, no, no.
Oh, no.
Sit down.
Get back up here.
Come on.
Come on, Ted.
Come on.
Oh, I know some board members have stuff to say. We'll start with Mrs. Swanson.
I'll start.
Please
And
have a
this
seat.
is gonna go back to softball. My first involvement in town was running the girls' what was called the Lassie League at the time in town. And when I took it over, my daughter, I think, was 6 or 7 playing, and I looked at the Little League field up the center of town, and there was a nice scoreboard there, and I think Little League had just finished building the field down on Bond Road, and there was a really nice scoreboard there. And you go to the girls' softball field, the one girls' softball field, nothing. No dugouts, no scoreboards, no nothing. And I said, well, this is a problem. And in conversation, someone said to me, well, you know, Ted always said that he'd be willing to donate a scoreboard for the softball league, but no one ever asked him. And I said, well, we'll take care of that pretty quickly. So I went down, I had never met Ted. I went down, introduced myself to him, and told him why I was there. And he said, well, you know, I'm really busy. I don't have time to research it. Let me know what you want, and we'll go from there. And I said, okay. So I went down and looked at the nice new scoreboard that was down at the Bond Road baseball field, and I went back and I researched that one, and I said, this is what it is. This is what we're looking for. He said, well, will you put the TED Supports Charlton Youth Sports on it? I said, we absolutely would do that. And he sat down and wrote me a check for the entire cost of the scoreboard, which was fair amount of money. We'll leave it at that. Ted was always there when the softball leagues would have our bottle drives and handle some of the most disgusting cans and bottles that you would ever see in your life. And Ted was always there to support it. Anytime we've ever gone to him, be it as part of the youth sports programs in town, the Race Foundation, anything any of us have ever gone to Ted and Tarek and Sue about, they've just stepped right up and been there beforehand. I could go on about a lot of things Ted has done for the town that he did more anonymously, so we'll leave it at that. But I think it's important for people to know how involved you are and how supportive you are in the community. So as a parent and a longtime resident, I just want to thank you for everything you've done for the town.
Thank you, Rick.
Mr. Singer?
I'm not as young as him, and I'm definitely not as old as him, so my stories probably just fall somewhere in the middle. But I really just want to say, you know, they talk about being a part of the Charlton family, and you are, but you're also really a part of everyone's individual families, and you may not realize that. The impact you have on the individuals and even the kids, and everyone knows who you are. It's not just you, it's your whole family, and even Derek, who's not here.
Yeah, he is.
Oh,
He's
you're
just-
hiding.
He's smart enough not to come up.
I couldn't see you behind. He's very tall. So, but you do. Whether it's going to ask what to buy and then being referred to Tarek, you know, or where to take the kids for supper. There you go. But what you do I just want to say what you do for this town and everyone who lives here is valuable. Would be an understatement, I think, and just the impact you have on people's everyday lives in this community is immeasurable. And I'm glad, I think everyone here is better to know you and your family and what you bring to this town.
Thanks, Dave.
Mr. McGrath?
I just want to echo the sentiments of Dave and Rick. It's tough to own a business today. And it's tough to start a business with a young family and keep it going. Ted, you're blessed. You have your son working right alongside of you. You've been able to expand the business. I think when you
forget my wife.
She's the boss. I know, hey, when you and I have had this discussion, who's driving the bus? Hey, Sue, you put up with them for a long time. Yeah,
That's
a
why it's
long
40
time.
years.
I've been through 7 presidents I worked through. I worked through 3 police chiefs, 4 fire chiefs, and 1 wife.
It does. But you know, you did the expansion across the street, and that was a difficult expansion to do because there were numerous properties when you came in before the planning board. And there's some zoning things, but you stuck with it and you made it work, and you made a great facility across the street. You know, and then why? You decided to do the new one, you know, with the amount of work and the headache that went with it. But what a beautiful facility you made down there, and it was not a cheap thing to do. And
To add to that, the reason I did it was because I have a son who is gonna take over, so
And-
otherwise Sue and I would be in, who knows?
You'd be working every day.
but you know.
Probably wouldn't be 40 years.
You know, to make the math work on everything that you did down there and the way that you did it, which was first class, the things that you do for the community and hiring, you know, local people to work down there, the respect which you and your staff treat everybody that comes in the door, and always with a kind word and a big smile. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Graver?
Oh, many of the things I wanted to say, I could just go ditto with you, John. That you chose to be here and to expand, and I hear you just say it's for Tarek, so I think he also should be kind of up here, because I'm sure his whole life has been centered around this business for 40 years. I want to say thank you. I had the pleasure of watching when you started your expansion, and you are an anchor in this town. And, you know, I know that they've said that you support the community, and you are the community. It feels like that's the place to go. If they had a cheer song, it would be the TED song. And I appreciate when I go in there that you always have a smile. Tarek, you have a smile, too. I don't see very often, but
You see him more during football season.
it's true.
Exactly.
You're always helpful. You guys are right there to say, what do you need, and a big smile, so thank you.
Thank you.
I'm
Mr.
going to have
Swanson?
two more very quick ones, Ted, and I'll apologize now. First one, I went into Ted's one day, and he's behind the counter making my purchases. I'm like, what's going on? He says, Sue's telling me, we got to go on vacation. I got to go away for 10 days on vacation. I'm like, boy, that really, I forget if it was Florida or the Caribbean, someplace to go away. Then I went in a few days later, and you're all excited. He says, I was able to get it down to 7 days. The only man I've ever known that's happened, he could cut his vacation shorter by 3 days. And the only other one I'll tell is I went in one day, and you showed me a copy of your report card from Southbridge High School. And I'm just thankful that your success, that report card wasn't indicative of your success, and we'll leave it at that. You should post it. Thanks again for all you've done.
Thank you again. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Tarek. Thank you for being part of this community.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Graver?
I would say if there's any businesses out there that, you know, we found, I can say we found these a little bit by accident because they had the banners up across their buildings.
Yep.
But we have a lot of family-owned businesses and different businesses here that hit benchmarks. And my hope is that somebody will let us know when there is a benchmark. I would hate to miss people and not have the opportunity to thank them for their
Absolutely. So
contributions.
if you have a business, or if you know have a friend, or if you go to a business that's been around for a while and is celebrating, please definitely let us know. We want to recognize what is the bedrock of our town. So thank you again. It was just a fun part of the job. Unfortunately, as we were showing a lot of love, we are falling a little bit behind. So we will now get to our 6:50 appointment with Russell Jennings for zoning for multiple properties. Ms. Graver?
Yes, sir. Mr. Jennings, who is representing his mother, Iris Jennings, has asked for time on the agenda regarding a petition for a zoning change of approximately 207 acres from agriculture to business community.
Thank you, Ms. Graver, and just try to keep this discussion down to 10 minutes. And this is for a zoning change, I believe, correct, for the upcoming town meeting warrant?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your time this evening. Through the chair, I'd like to welcome my mother, Iris Jennings.
Welcome, Ms. Jennings.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming here tonight.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much. Believe me, it won't be more than 10 minutes. We Irish like to talk, but sometimes we know when to stop. I've come before you, the Board of Selectmen, tonight, and the town of Charlton, the people of Charlton. I'm seeking support at the annual town meeting, May 21st, to rezone my property from agricultural to community business. My family and I have owned the property since the 60s, and I'm sure many, many people have many questions about this. I request that any questions be saved for the public hearing at the planning board. Also, I'd like to appoint my son Russell Jennings as my representative of this matter moving forward. Thank you for your time. And that's it, and good evening.
Thank you, Iris.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Craver?
So we do have a petition that was sent to the board. It will be in your packet when we have a discussion about the warrant. So it is there, just so Russ knows that you have it. You haven't seen it, looked at it yet, but it'll be a little bit later.
Right.
Okay. That's it.
Did it say anything on this matter? I know that we, once again, will be taking up the annual town meeting warrant
I'm
later
not
on.
going to mess with that tonight.
Yeah.
That's probably a good policy. It's your mom.
Absolutely.
Yeah, open it up for discussion?
Nope.
No?
No?
No.
No.
It's a public, there's,
He just said he didn't want to.
yeah, through the chair.
Yep.
There's a public hearing at the planning board on this.
Okay.
Has that date been set, Russ?
I believe it was discussed about April 18th.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's set in stone at this point in time.
Mr. Meskis?
So-
That was the date that I confirmed with planning board today, that it would be April 18th, and it would be in the senior center downstairs. The library is unavailable.
April 18th?
April
Okay.
18th in the,
Thank
Thank you.
in the
Very
senior
good.
center?
And for those that are watching, you will have several zoning articles, and the planning board is required to have a public hearing before the town meeting, a certain number of days ahead, before it goes to town meeting for any zoning changes. So it's part of the process.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Jennings.
All right, thank you for your time.
Ma'am?
No, Joe.
Oh, do you have something pertaining to this
No.
issue?
No.
We will be, once again, there will be a public hearing
Yeah.
for this, April 18th. I don't think this is the correct forum to have any debate or discussions on the exact proposal of language.
Yeah.
Since it is a citizen petition that is not affiliated with the Board of Selectmen.
What I will say, though, is for process tonight with the warrant, tonight, the Board of Selectmen will be closing the warrant. All petitions certainly do get on the warrant. They will not be looking at all of the language. They'll be giving some direction. In 2 weeks, the Board of Selectmen will close the warrant down, and then it'll be another, probably 2 weeks before they start making their recommendations on whether to support or not the articles.
I believe we're
So-
closing the warrant tonight.
You're closing the warrant tonight. Tomorrow, next week will be when you do the final language so that we can post.
Yep.
And then we will start writing the motions, and then you will start approving the motions.
Right.
Yep.
So just keep an eye on how the agenda goes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to our 7 o'clock appointment with Police Chief Maxiel for an update. Chief, welcome.
Hi. How's everybody?
Good.
Ms. Kramer, do you have anything to read for this?
I do. Let me just get to it.
How's it going, Chief? Sir, how are you? Good,
Page
you?
30.
Living the dream.
31.
Passed it right by it. Hold on.
Sorry.
There we
Technical
go.
difficulties.
Yes, sir. At the board's November 7th meeting, in a discussion with Chief Maxfield, you had asked him to come periodically and update the board on the financial and detailed billing of the police department. He is here tonight to provide you with information.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Chief, please take it away.
Thank you. So, when I last talked to you, we were talking about past detail payments, and I was going to try to make a spreadsheet, but I didn't want to kill a forest full of trees trying to provide you with all that information, so I'll just give you the quick numbers because I know we're running behind. So to date, we've collected $235,601. That's from July 1st till now.
How much was that?
$235,601. That's the total amount we've collected. I think what the board was most interested in was the past due balances. So I'm reporting to you that we collected $121,295 for details worked prior to July 2017. So for my administrative assistant, Mara Jackson, who's back there, who really does all the work at the PD, of that $121,000, $83,737 was over 60 days, prior to last July. And of that, $41,675 we discovered that was never invoiced. I think we mentioned at the Goals and Objectives meeting that we had doing some mining of data out of the computers and invoices and that kind of thing. So I believe you have this sheet here in front of you, dated today. So going forward, this is the only thing that's outstanding from last July till now. As you can see, everything's within my 45-day protocol. Nothing has reached the 60 days yet. If any vendor goes 60 days, they get a work prohibition notice that they can't work in Charlton. We haven't hit that yet. Mara's relentless. If you owe her money, you're in trouble. So that's really all I have. We've collected everything that we had records for. Unfortunately, we've hit a wall, so that amount hasn't changed. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy.
Mr. Singer?
Not so much a question, Chief, as I think just a comment and a thank you. So what I'm looking at right here, I don't even think drastic is a strong enough word. The difference between what we're looking at here and what we have been looking at, let's just say previously. I have no words. It's just night and day, the difference. And thank you for the work you've done. Thank you for getting this cleaned up and for staying on top of it. And just, again, couldn't be happier with this.
Mr. Swenson?
I'll just echo what Mr. Singer said. I want to commend you and your staff, Chief, for getting this done.
Thank you, and I
This is great
appreciate,
work.
through the chair, thank you, Mrs. Swanton, because it really is my staff. Again,
Understood.
I have great people around me. They're doing great work.
It's great to see. I do have one question for you, if I could. We
Yes.
had instances in the past where it would get whittled down, the detailed billing, then balloon again, and get whittled down and balloon again. So if you could for a minute, just tell us how you're handling the current billing and how it's being administered, so we don't end up in that situation again.
Don't piss her off.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking him, not her.
So essentially, the first thing I did day 2 after you appointed me is revamp the detail billing protocol, and I cut down all the time. So all invoices are due within 30 days. At 45 days, they get a warning. At 60 days, they get shut off. 61 days, my court officer we haven't run into it yet because, again, I have the bulldog in the back who's, on it. But we'll take them to small claims if we have to. I gave you my word when you appointed me that I wasn't going to let this become a problem. And we used to check this every day. I can pull this report on demand, stop it any time if you want to see what's outstanding. But it hasn't been a problem. So we look at it weekly, every couple of weeks. If somebody gets close, we make a phone call. But this is the ones that you see here. It's just a normal 30, 45 days for some of these larger companies. So we don't, again, we have the right people in the right place doing the right things.
Ms. Craver?
Thank you.
Yes, I want to make sure we're clear on the information that the chief is presenting, and he's done a great job, and Maura has done a fantastic job there. And since he's taken over, there is not outstanding. But there's always a but. What's not being reported, which has already been reported to you, so I just want to make sure you hold that still in the back of your mind, because we'll be going to town meeting And my understanding is that there's an estimated $100,000 that we are going to need to make up that is not accounted for, that is not traceable, and there's different reasons why. And I don't know if the chief wants to speak a
I
little
can
bit
speak to that if you'd like. Yeah, so,
It
the
clearly
first.
wasn't his fault.
Yeah, well, this happened
This
years
happened before.
ago. Some of it goes back a decade. Donna in finance, who was, again, excellent, by the way, and has helped me tremendously. When she came, she brought an auditor in. We've had the auditor over to our building at least a half a dozen times because we wanted to get to the bottom of two. So everything that we had records for, again, we attacked and we billed and we got everything that we could. The problem that we were running into is a lot of the records don't exist. They've been deleted, they've been shredded, they're just not available to us. There was things in the computer that made no sense. We brought in an expert to mine what we could. That money that you're talking about for the warrant article, that is a product of the finance director and the auditor finding things from years ago that were never reconciled, journals and records and that kind of thing. And she could probably speak better to it. My understanding, though, is that amount is going to be around $100,000. So, but again, this is nothing in the past couple of years. We're talking, almost a decade.
And it's something that both the fire, the police department, our office, and our finance team has been working on, obviously developing policies and procedures in place so it doesn't happen again, and going back as much as we could. Ms. Noble, did you want to say something?
Yeah, very, very quickly. Thank you, Mara, for all your hard work. This board appreciates it so much. Chief Maxfield, you did a good job in hiring that woman.
I sure did.
Now I
She
want to
came
shift.
highly recommended.
Yes.
Jimmy Philbrook still has not forgiven me.
And he probably won't. I want to shift gears slightly, though. I appreciate all the financial information you gave us, but last time we spoke, we had talked about a traffic officer. Would it be possible for you to give us an update on the traffic officer, and how is the Citizens Traffic Advisory Committee going along?
The advisory committee meets every month. Last meeting was a couple of weeks ago. We had Jerry Foskett in. We've been addressing some complaints. We've been moving our speed trailer around. We've been, looking for ways, looking for monies, that kind of thing. So we're doing okay, and we're having very productive meetings. As far as the traffic officer, so we posted that in December. And we got 2 applications. And so I had a meeting with the town administrator and the human resources director, and I said, how should we proceed? We've only got 2. So we posted it a second time, and we didn't get any more, so we have still the same 2. The problem that I'm running into is that a lot of the area communities are offering the Quinn bill. It's not the Quinn bill anymore, but an educational incentive that's equal to what the Quinn bill used to be. So Southbridge, Webster, Millbury, all of those towns, Auburn. So when officers are looking for another job, they're going to other communities that pay a little better, So we are doing interviews of the 2 candidates that we have week after next. And my staff will be conducting those interviews, and they'll report back to me if they're going to bring a candidate forward. If not, I'll report back to you and see what the board wishes for me to do at that point.
Thank you. And that committee has been very helpful so far. We've been receiving a lot of complaints about various issues in town relating to traffic, and being able to forward it to your committee to look at it and to actually do something on it is.
One other thing, if I may, sir. I've also moved an extra body to that time slot in the afternoon and designated that person when available just to do traffic out there. So those signs that they've put up seem to be helping. We have had a couple of accidents kind of thing, and we're going to have that anyway. But we're still trying to target that area until we get somebody full-time in place to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Singer?
No, I just wanted to point out regarding the numbers, while I appreciate what was pointed out, it's still a separate issue. You can manage things that are within your control. Things that are beyond your control, you manage as best you can. And so I appreciate what was pointed out, it is valid information, it's still a separate issue from this. And I don't want that to detract from the excellent work that was done here. And that you and your team continue to do.
Thank you, sir.
Is there any more questions for the chief? I appreciate the update, and if you...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
No, I said thank you,
Oh,
Mr.
no.
Chairman. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
You
If
bet.
you need anything else, please let us know, and we look forward to next update.
thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Have a great night.
Thank you, Chief.
We'll be holding our 7:15 scheduled appointment for Chapter 61B for King Road, indefinitely to a future meeting. So then we'll move now, right on time, to our 7:30 appointment with the planning board for the town planner position. I'd ask the planning board to please come on up. Yeah, and we have Miss Lorenz, I believe. I mean-
King Road has asked to be held.
Jessica's
You wanna go
over.
grab her? You can read the memo, please? Okay.
So where are we now?
Planning board, 7:30.
Hey, Pete.
How you doing?
Good. Hey, Bill.
She's supposed to be here tonight?
She's across the street at the personnel board meeting.
She must be there.
Mr. Starkis, welcome.
How you doing, Joe?
Members of the planning board. Ms. Kirby, do you have the memo?
The planning board has asked to meet with you regarding the town planner position. Attached for reference is a memo from the Human Resource Director, Jessica Lorenz, regarding the planning director hiring process, planning director job description, EDC director job description, and minutes from your last meeting with the planning board, EDC and finance committee on January 23rd.
Thank you, Ms. Kirby.
So all of that is here in your packet.
Thank you. Mr. Starkis,
Because we have 3 planning board members here tonight, I'd like to do a roll call
please do.
to open up. Virginia? Alicia? And myself. And Dawn. We're all here. We're a little upset with the thing that came to us from Human Resources. At our previous meetings that we had downstairs, there was probably like 18 of us there or
Mhm.
more.
It was EDC, planning board, board of selectmen, finance committee.
Everybody was there. I was under the impression that when we came out of that meeting, that the EDC and the planning director's position was gonna stay as is, not 2 separate people. By me reading this tonight, it looks like we're trying to create 2 jobs descriptions. We're gonna be going before the finance committee tomorrow night, and I've gotta be able to say to them that we're looking to hire 1 person for 2 jobs. We've been without a planning director for 5 months now, and if we keep doing these kind of scenarios, we're gonna probably be another 5 months without a planning director. We've gotta decide that this is 1 position, and
Right.
let us advertise it, and, we'll go from there.
Absolutely, and that's why we're having those meetings to try to, bridge that gap of understanding that we seem to have. And after our last meeting, you gave us the form, the posting that you wanted for a planning director.
Correct.
And according to the minutes, and that's why we asked Ms. Lorenz to have this memo. She obviously listened to the meeting, and we transcribed the minutes. And that's why we make sure that you were involved, and I was involved as well, to make sure that was accurate in this memo. I know there's some discrepancies that was stated by yourself, but it said planning director on that memo. And we asked, because obviously we know your need for a planning director, and there's so much work and there's so much things going on in town and when we see that you're falling behind because you don't have the manpower. So we're completely understanding of that factor. But when we said that, what are you looking for? You said a planning director.
No, I don't
On
believe
top
that.
of the sheet, it says
No.
planning director, it doesn't say EDC director.
No, I believe that's incorrect. At that meeting, as a board, we all agreed that we want 1 person to be the EDC and the planning director. And if we're gonna advertise the job, we've gotta advertise it that way.
Right, so the paper that you gave us from the planning board on the top said planning director.
Correct. It says planning director, but it also says, if you go into it, that he will be working with the EDC.
Right. Which,
process.
if in the past, I know we've had many discussions on this issue, that some EDC duties are typical responsibilities of a planning director. So is not directing EDC, he's working with the EDC, is something that's incidental to the position of planning director. I thought that we were on that same page after that meeting.
We have,
This is what we have.
we gave this, this was not given to us.
The one that they actually posted for the job.
Correct.
And feel free to jump in.
I'm pretty sure you're right. It did say planning director.
Right.
The job title said planning director, it did not say planning director and EDC.
I think with the.
If we're gonna speak, just make sure
Yeah,
the speaker into
I
the
just-
microphone. Mr. McGrath?
I believe what the planning board is saying is that even though it said planning director at the top, it still included the EDC director's duties in the narrative down in the body of the description.
And Mr. McGrath, in those duties, it didn't say directing, it said it was working with and coordinating with the Economic Development Commission.
Okay.
And I know that this board has taken, always had the commitment to focusing on economic development, especially with all the development coming down the pike.
Right.
And one issue that we both saw and shared, that a planning director has his or her plate absolutely full. There'd be so much development that's already here and coming down the pike that there's not enough bandwidth to actually work on EDC duties. Ms. Sheik?
Thank you. At that meeting, I believe, and I don't have a direct quote, I'm sure you have the transcription, I do not, but what we had agreed upon was that we would put it out as a planning director. They would work on the EDC duties, and if at that time there was so much work that they needed to then hire another person, someone actually made the joke, that would be a good problem to have, that we have so much work that we would need to hire a part-time person. So we came out of that meeting with the impression that the person we hired was gonna be the planning director. They were gonna also lead the EDC, as Alan used to do, and then if at that time, maybe a couple months, a year down the road, there was so much work that we needed to hire another person, we would then at that time look at that. But the person we hired would come in under the understanding that 75% of what they did would be planning director, 25% would be economic development leader. And then again, as we go through, if it gets busier and busier, awesome, we'll just hire, we'll put that out to the table again to hire an EDC person. But at this time, it would be 75-25, which is where, when we put out our description, we actually put in, as I'm sure you have, that they would be attending EDC meetings and working directly with the EDC chairman and members, and that they would chair the EDC and because really, that's about a 25% split.
So I agree with what you're saying there. And I believe it didn't say chairing those meetings. We still have a chair for the committee. And you're saying that they would work with the Economic Development Commission to work on, helping them out. Many times before, both sides, both our board, your board, and the Economic Development Commission said that is the nature of a town planner. The town planning director, some of his or her responsibilities is to work with the EDC. And at that meeting, and your board's said that the EDC, economic development, is not the responsibility of the planning board.
I don't agree with that.
Through the chair?
Ms. Noble?
I was also at that meeting.
Yep.
And there were members of the Economic Development Committee there. I don't recall a 75-25 split being discussed. I do recall the conversation that you just brought up where we discussed having somebody come in full-time and they would have some shared duties with the EDC.
Mm-hmm.
But I also recall the members of the EDC being, how do I put it, autonomous? Perhaps that's not the right word to use. but they felt that they could manage economic development without having their own specific staff person or somebody guaranteed, 25% of their time to them. I don't recall that.
And just,
I'm sorry.
and to elaborate on my statement from before, it's not that you don't care about economic development. Of course, you're playing it. That's one of the most important steps of economic development is, making sure people are developing correctly, helping developers out, developing site plans and whatnot. But you even said that you didn't want that responsibility because it's not under your control. It's right now it's under the purview of our board through the Economic Development Commission.
Can I rebut? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right. We do have a letter here from Rich Sayre. He said that we could read it tonight. And it says, "It was my understanding from attending the meeting that the intent was to continue to have the town planner and the EDC director remain as one position." So this is a feeling from the EDC members. And I believe this would also translate to the night that we had that meeting, that they all felt the same.
Well, I'm hesitant to say it represents all the EDC members. It was from Mr. Kerr, who was there and was very vocal and very instrumental in helping us. I thought come to understanding throughout that process. And I remember at the last meeting as we were wrapping up, it was getting late into the evening, where we said, because you needed the post, and you get that process underway, and we're absolutely on the same page that you absolutely need a planner.
Yes.
And I said on top of that page, you're looking to hire looking to hire a planning director. You said yes, and not an EDC director, and you said yes.
I think that's where some of the confusion lies, and I am also on the EDC.
Right.
Whereas we definitely need a planning director all day long.
Yep.
110%. We needed him yesterday. We needed him 3 yesterdays ago. I guess my confusion, and forgive me because this is more your area than mine, we were under the impression, as I'm sure, and I know Rich and I have talked as well, that the town planner would lead the EDC because the two roles are so overlapping. The EDC is almost, and I know I've said this before, is almost like the foyer to the planning director. I mean, they come before the EDC first and then they come before planning, so the two roles are automatically overlapping all the time. And the joy of having one person in that role is the fact that you don't have to constantly brief someone.
Right.
The other fear of hiring someone part-time is that the quality of person you're going to get is going to be better as a full-time person in rare circumstances. I mean, Bill's fabulous, but typically if you're hiring a part-time person, you're not going to get the same level of quality as you're hiring and I don't know the N levels here, but a planning director. So I guess my question is, what is the harm in temporarily combining the two positions until such time that person feels that it's just too much? Because they could also come back and say, listen, I can't do all of this.
Right. So that's an interesting question because if you were to hire a planning director and EDC director in one position and then say, oh, we were right, everyone knew, even from the start, we even talked about for a while, saying that there was so much bandwidth, there's only so much bandwidth a person can have.
Sure.
And there's so much we have now that it's overwhelming. And that we know that there's going to be even more coming down. Do you say to this person that you hired as planning director / EDC person, well, we don't want you being EDC director, we're going to take $25,000 away from your salary?
No, absolutely not. What we would say is we have so much more work. We need to hire someone, is what we discussed at these meetings, to assist you. We need to hire someone, not necessarily now we're taking the EDC away, but now we're hiring someone in some capacity to assist that person who's already in the position, who's already familiar with all the projects going in town, as opposed to hiring a brandy new person and just removing the EDC roles.
Mr. Singer?
So I might be hearing it wrong, but what I'm hearing is that you want to hire one person, effectively pay them the higher pay, which is effectively, pay for both jobs. And then when it gets to the point where we have to hire a second person, continue to pay them for both jobs, and then also pay somebody else. Because we've gone, I just want to say, historically, we went down that road. We used to have separate positions in this town. Planning and EDC, they were separate.
Yes.
We didn't have enough to warrant separate positions. What was done at that time was they combined those two, and I think, which to me to this day is an embarrassment to the town, instead of maybe paying that person a little bit more because of the added responsibilities, they took the entire second salary and gave it to that person. That person then had that for the remainder of their time here. Now we have an opportunity to look at what we do going forward and say, are we going to take the same approach, pay more money for one person to do a dual role, and then say that's okay, keep the more money because we're going to hire somebody else, even though you only do one job now? It's a consideration.
Of course.
So one thing I'd like people to think of is if you are going to hire someone, and I wasn't at that meeting, so whether it's one person that's doing a dual role, it should still be, to me, a one-person salary, because if there's only that much work, it only justifies one person's salary, not a higher salary. And then you have to go and hire someone else later, you're gonna be paying that person. So I just caution you with the different pay grades and people talking about throwing more money on top of money now, you can't take it away later. And if you do, now you take, well, it's okay, keep the money. Be very careful with that.
Mr. McGrath?
One of the suggestions I might make is what we did when we hired the former planning director, which is we brought him in as a planning director. You know, and then we see how that works out, and then we see what added work he can take on the EDC end of it. And then we adjust the salary through agreement from everybody on how to do that. So that solves two issues. The first issue, the dire need that you have to get a town planner, and it gives us, both boards, a chance to write down what we think an EDC director should be doing. I know from the, at least from my perspective, being on the board of selectmen, we're looking for a salesperson.
Yes.
At least that's what I'm looking for. You know, and we see if this person is gonna be capable of doing some of that. But if for the interim, I would, and I'm, you know, this is just a suggestion in my own thoughts on this. You know, I'm just throwing that out there.
And I just want to say one thing, that we don't want to get in your way. We don't want to hold back the planning work, because we care about the work you do, because the work's very important, and having the correct staff is also very important.
And we appreciate that, thank you.
Oh, and no problem, it's just the way, you know, team, we're all in Team Charlton, and hopefully we all do realize that. And I know, even at those meetings we were having, we were excited because we were talking with EDC and how they were getting more ambitious, saying that we can do more, and our board's getting to do more. And you know, in one of our upcoming meetings, I'm asking for a workshop to figure out from our board what we want to do with economic development going forward.
Yes.
Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. It does sound a little confusing as I'm listening, because I think it does sound like people are saying some of the same things, but some of the meanings are different. I wasn't at that meeting, so I don't know what your agreement was, but what I do want to remind you is when we did the classification plan and the salary plan, you have three different options for positions. You had an EDC director, which you have a full job description with a lot of duties attached to that. You have a planning director position, which has, you know, the work of the planning board. And then you have a planner EDC director, which would combine both of those job descriptions together. I think the salary separation was the planner was around $60,000 to $70,000, depending on the experience. The rest of that was EDC. That certainly could be looked at. And then if it was a planner / EDC director, then it would be the combined, which was around $95,000 at that time. So I think you might want to start talking about positions versus, I think a planner who is just a planner at the $65,000, $70,000 range would still be connected to the EDC. And I think that's where some of the questioning is happening.
Exactly.
But they're not taking on all of that person would not be taking on all of the director positions for duties. So giving that as I'm listening to this, giving the $95,000 to a town planner it sounds like what came out of that meeting doesn't make sense. So I'm just trying to figure out who's saying what. So am I saying something that makes sense of the three
Yes.
positions?
Yes, and the one, you're absolutely correct. And I think what we're thinking of is the town planner / EDC director who might not do this huge amount, but the EDC meetings, for example, are held during the daytime, during a town planner's normal course of day. Alan used to set up at the Worcester Business Expo, and he set up a booth as his EDC role to, again, be a salesperson and to really sell the town of Charlton to different people coming through. Whereas the planner is more planning. And there is, again, so much overlap. But we also defer to you in your judgment, because you sit up there, you've sat up there for, you oversee from your standpoint, and you know both sides too. So we're here to work together to do
Right.
the best. But for I guess my question is, and I'm truly asking, what would be the harm of hiring a planning director / when putting the EDC part into the job description, which we have, and then asking them to chair some of the EDC meetings, and maybe not go at the EDC position in such a way that someone hired full-time for just EDC would, but to kind of guide that ship a little bit? Is there a harm to that? And I'm asking.
Ms. Noble?
Are there any members of the EDC here tonight besides you?
I don't see any. No.
No.
So here's my question. We hire this individual as planning / EDC director, and you want them to chair the EDC meetings. Okay. Did the former planner chair those meetings?
Alan, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. And is the EDC on board with the planner chairing those meetings?
I don't want to speak on behalf of the board because enough of them aren't here.
Okay, so
From
then the
best-
other question is, who's chairing those meetings now?
We haven't had any.
So you don't have, you have an EDC, but you have no one chairing the meetings?
Jay Detterondo is the chair of the EDC. To the
Okay,
best of my knowledge, I have not been informed of a meeting happening. I could be wrong, and we can check the minutes.
Okay.
I don't think that they've
Okay.
called a meeting at this point.
But I don't think the
Okay.
meeting has been called. But Jay Detterondo is the EDC chair.
so is the EDC meeting at all?
To the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay.
Because the town planner, or as the EDC director role at that
Uh-huh.
time, was really driving that ship.
Okay.
So
And-
until someone else is identified to do that or
Right.
not, and then the chairman would do it, it's kind of in holding.
It's kind of in a state of limbo at the moment.
Yes.
And
So I do have one question, because I looked at the list of all of the projects the planning board does have. So do you have time to be able to put towards, because what I thought I'd heard in the first meeting was that you had so much in front of you as a planning board that you really needed to get that person on board for planning immediately. And that was
Yes.
why I
Yes.
thought that you had talked about dropping the EDC portion of it and just have them do the planning.
No, I think we want to make sure that who we hire as our planning director will attend the EDC meetings and maybe chair the EDC meetings to coordinate it. And that way there, he could report back to the board on what was at that
Okay.
EDC meeting.
Mr. Singer first?
Just a comment and a question. So, a comment I'd like you to think about, because they're different pay grades, if you bring in a planning director / EDC director effectively at $95,000, then because it's two jobs, do a role, higher pay grade, then you hire someone else to do the EDC director as a separate role, and you pay them the $25,000. What conversation are you now going to have with the person that did the dual role about not only lowering them from a grade N8 to a grade N7, but cutting their pay by $25,000 to also compensate in the fact that they no longer do that role that now you're paying someone else to, because you're going to have to cut their pay by $25,000. My thought is, if you want to have a planning director who's involved in EDC, and you want to have the ability to hire an EDC director later, which you're going to have to pay for, why can't we just put something in the job description for the planning director, and you may have said this, to allow them to participate in that role as an N7, so that you still have the money available to hire an
Right.
EDC director later?
And just to try to clarify, the posting that you had for this job, on the top, it is said planning director. In it, it says work with the Economic Development Commission,
Yes.
which is said is a normal function of a
Yes.
planning director.
Yes.
So it sounds like we're looking for a planning director to work with the EDC. It's just, that's part of the job.
It will
But
always
not
be
an
part of the job
EDC.
because that's.
But not
what we
EDC
do.
director. I imagine that there's other ways of having a meeting chaired, of effectuating the Economic Development Commission. When you say you hire, it's really the purview of the Board of Selectmen to hire an EDC director or EDC person. because it's ultimately it's just our domain
Yes.
through statute.
Yes.
Mr. McGrath, do you want to say something?
I think more than chairing the EDC meetings,
Right.
facilitate, okay? Because it's probably the best way to put it. The chair is Jay Detterando, the planning director was facilitating the meeting. You know, and I still put out what I said before, hire a planning director at the planning director's salary, see how they do, see what portion of the EDC they can pick up. We don't have to give them the full salary for the EDC, but we can compensate them, you know, partially. And then that leaves money also, David, that if later on we want to go, that person's still going to have to coordinate with the EDC and work with the EDC. But we still have the bulk of the salary or whatever to go out and hire an EDC director.
Yeah, you understand my concern from past
Yeah, you can't
history.
take money away from people once you give it to them. I know exactly what you're saying.
Right, and also paying one person 2 salaries makes no sense either.
Mr. Sarkis?
So I guess what I kind of want to leave here tonight with is that we hire a planning director. It's got to be part of his understanding that he will attend the EDC meetings. Hopefully he can communicate back between the planning board members and the EDC people. And, you know, if it is an N7 job description, we start at that.
Mm-hmm.
And that still allows us some money left over instead of it being an N8 description. And then if a year from now or 2 years from now, we find that there is a lot of need for an EDC.
Right, if not sooner.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Then we can go from there, so
Right.
I guess what we're saying tonight is just, let's hire a planning director, tell him that he's gotta be the middleman
Yes.
Right.
between the board and the EDC and communicate with us.
Which, it's just that, you know, I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but that's the way it's been presented all along, is that that's just a natural function, a natural overlap with that position.
But regardless, we have clarification and
Yes.
agreement on understanding, which is what's important.
Right, absolutely.
So I think that's awesome, and I'm for one would like to see them get what they're asking for. I think it makes sense to do it in that manner.
Which the process is well underway currently, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we are actually meeting tomorrow as a subcommittee, a couple of us are meeting as a subcommittee to review resumes.
Mm.
Oh, good.
Very
So,
good.
yes.
How many did you end up getting?
I don't know the exact number, a lot. There's a big pile, because I've been making notes all over them. We're super excited, we really are, because they've come in quick, they've come in strong, and I'm hoping we can put this to bed sooner rather than later, so fingers crossed that it
That's-
all works out.
That's very encouraging.
Yeah.
It's good to hear. I'm glad that job posting got up.
Me
And-
too.
Yes, and I just quickly, if the planning director does not chair the EDC
Mhm.
and merely facilitates and participates and acts as a conduit,
Sure.
I think that might be a better way to ease them into the EDC arena and have a member of the EDC actually chair their own committee.
And I definitely think that we would want to do that anyway, because as they're new to the town, I think it's going to be a process.
Right.
And that's
Right.
not necessarily a bad thing. And Jay Detterando is completely capable of chairing those meetings. And for right now, we just need to focus on planning. Right now, the focus,
Yeah.
EDC is gonna take a back burner to planning, because planning is super important right now. And these darn snowstorms have caused meetings to be
Yes,
canceled,
they
so,
have,
yeah.
haven't they? Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Singer?
Yeah, just, I'm curious now though, because it has come up. If EDC has not yet met, and we're almost done with Q1, what has been going on? I'd like to try and get an update, and I ask because I'm not sure if EDC, they have a chamber membership or what's going on, but
Right.
I know there's a business expo in, I think, just about a week, at which there will be tons and tons of businesses, and I'm curious to know if our EDC has any plans on attending that business expo, it's one of the chamber business expos, to meet all these business owners to potentially lure them to Charlotte.
And I would ask Ms. Craver to follow up on that. I know that one thing that we have been doing is having a meeting with EDC on a quarterly basis for updates. And that, and one of the next meetings I'm asking on the agenda is to put, to invite EDC and have a talk between our boards about what are our goals, what do we want, what are the functions that we're looking for, what things we want them to tackle.
Yes, and I would ask you just to convey to the EDC that there's a Q9 Chamber Business Expo next week they might want to go to.
I will check with the chairman if you want, and if you want, since there hasn't been a meeting, I can call a meeting and just get that going.
Yeah.
I'll contact the chair.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Through the chair. I see a friend of mine, Mr. William Scanlon here. Bill is filling in as the interim planner for us, and I just want to let people know that Bill has a variety of experience from CMRPC. He was our liaison when he was there. I believe you ran the place for a while, Bill. And then he's done some consulting work for us. So a lot of the good work that you see in our zoning bylaws and some of the projects that we have done for many years has been at the hand of Bill Scanlon. I just want to thank him from coming out of retirement off the bench and assisting us. It's good to know that there's a steady hand there, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill has been phenomenal, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. This one right here has just been helping, keep everything floating.
Yes.
But thank you again. I appreciate it, Mr. Sarkis, Ms. Cheek, Ms. Vincent, Mr. Clay, Mr. Scanlon for coming out. So,
Thank you, guys.
if anything else, please, obviously our phones are always on.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
This was a good discussion.
Just in summary, when I speak with HR, then it's a planner at N7, the BB liaison to the
Yes.
EDC.
Yep.
Correct.
Get themselves up to speed on planning, and then you'll take a look at what capacity they
Exactly.
have for EDC.
That sounds
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah,
So
and
that's-
obviously, once again, just inviting EDC to a future upcoming meeting. I know where it's so much happening right now, just so we can, effectuate our goals of development.
And have them call a meeting, please.
Yes.
I will call Jim.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
It was not easy.
All right, we will now move on to new business. Number one, item under new business, a request for a common vic license, the original Dresser Hill Restaurant.
Yes, sir. Attached is a request to transfer a common vicular license for Daniel Sad, Dresser Hill Clam Box to Nicole Sad, owner, and change the name to the original Dresser Hill Restaurant Incorporated. This establishment has held an automatic amusement license, but Ms. Sad has removed those from the establishment. Therefore, the only license that will be transferred is the common vicular license. She's completed the proper paperwork needed for this request, and I would recommend the board approve the request, and she is here if you have any questions.
Through the chair.
Welcome, Mr. McGrath.
I make a motion that we transfer the common vicular license for Daniel Sad Dresser Hill Clam Box to Nicole Sad as owner, and to change the name on the license to the original Dresser Hill Restaurant, Inc.
Thank you.
Second.
Your motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Swenson.
I just want to say that I had the opportunity to meet Ms. Saad when I stopped at the office a week or so ago. She's very energetic, very committed to this, and I'm sure is going to make a good go of it. So I just want to say best of luck to you.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Congratulations, and thank you for staying here. Item number 2 under new business is the Ribbon Rockets, a request for a toll road. Ms. Graver?
Yes, sir. Please find attached a letter from Relay for Life team, the Ribbon Rockettes, requesting permission to hold a toll road in Charlton Center, that intersection of Main Street and Masonic Home Road, on Saturday, May 5th, from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. This request was also forwarded to Chief Maxfield, who was in support of the toll booth contingent upon the following safety precautions. All volunteers must wear bright-colored vests. Orange traffic cones must be set out on Main Street and Masonic Home Road for a distance of not less than 50 feet on each respective way prior to reaching the toll station. A minimum of 5 traffic cones on each roadway should be put in place at a distance no greater than 10 feet apart. Signs warning voluntary toll booth ahead must be erected on both Masonic Home Road and Main Street not less than 75 feet from the toll station, and No stopping of cars or impeding the flow of the traffic in any way. The Ribbon Rockettes have noted that they will comply with the safety precautions as recommended, and I would recommend the board approve this request.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. What are the board's wishes in regards to approving as requested?
Chair,
Mr.
I
Swenson?
move that we approve the request from the Ribbon Rockettes for the toll road.
Thank you. Motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 3 under new business, the Board of Selectmen 2017 Annual Town Report. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir. Chairman Safarovich has completed the 2017 Annual Town Report for the board. You are asked to review and approve or make changes, recommended changes. What is the board's wishes?
Thank you, Ms. Craver. What are these board's wishes? I know we had a couple weeks to review it. I just want, before we take any action on this, I do want to echo some thanks in that letter. Mary and Kara in our office, has do so much work, and they really help make this board run. Ms. Craver for also, not only making us look good, but fighting for Charlton at every moment, staying late every day. Just 3 people. I don't think I could do this job without, and of course all the employees of the town who make everything run so smooth. So I just wanted to take a time to echo that thanks.
If Mary didn't bug you at least half a dozen times to get this in, you did it too soon.
That's true.
I motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion second to approve. Is any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Joe?
Yes.
Report looks great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, with that, we'll move on to old business. First item under old business is an update on solar acres, maps, and earnings from Mr. Meskis himself. Ms. Craver?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
At the board's February 3rd meeting, discussion was held regarding solar in Charlton. Mr. Maskis was asked to do some research with the assessors and planning boards on the following questions. How many acres of solar do we have? A map of the solar areas, amount of money the town earns from solar, and Mr. Singer to provide Mr. Meskis with a list of other towns that have put moratoriums on solar. Mr. Meskis is here to provide what information he has.
Thank you, Ms. Craver. Mr. Meskis, thank you so much. I know that we've been asking this and bugging you about this, and I appreciate you taking time to put us all together and to present tonight.
Wow.
Well, I didn't forecast the snow and postponed several meetings, so. The
Mr. Singer?
report, I did issue the report to you folks back on March 8th. I hope you've had time to read it. I know that the community has a great deal of interest in this, and, it goes on for quite a ways, but I'm going to try and summarize the thing. So the first question that was asked is, so how many acres of solar do we have? We have about 250 acres of solar fields in town. It's about 5 acres a megawatt. So that means, we have about whatever megawatts of solar. We have 47, maybe 50. About 50 acres of that has not been constructed yet. So we have 20 fields in place at this time. Half of those are old enough that they're being fully taxed. The other half of them are coming on. There's a personal property component to taxes that comes in on January 1st, and then there's real property taxes that comes in about 6 months later. That information comes from the assessors. Just to put it a little bit in perspective, the town of Charlton has about 28,000 acres of land. We're about 44 square miles. Google helped me with the math. Came out with 28,000 acres. So at that rate, 0.8% of the land in Charlton is covered. Less than 1% of the land in Charlton is covered with solar. Now, we do have a lot of water in town. We all enjoy recreating on that water, so I took out, the 8,000 odd, so now we're down to 20,000 acres maybe of dry land in Charlton. That's only 0.125, so 1.25% of the land area of all the projects we know of are covering land in Charlton. There's a lot of land in Charlton. I did lay out a whole bunch of questions that people had been asking. Answered them in detail, provided some backup information from some other stuff, and if I can find my cheat sheet in here somewhere.
No, we'll cheat.
I do have it in front of me if you want me to read them off to you.
Well, I have the whole list, but I had a cheat sheet of like the short answers to everything, and I sort of like misplaced it. So, is a moratorium allowed? Yes, a moratorium would be allowed, and I understand that there is a petition that the selectmen will have to select and will have to put forward. Planning board's aware of that. And some cautions on that moratorium. I've been talking to people at DOER and at Central Mass Planning. That moratorium has to be for a definitive time. It has to have some sort of results. And we are a green community, and that's a concern of mine when that moratorium question was posed, is how does that affect us as a green community? One of the things as a green community we have to do is allow solar by right. Doesn't mean we have to allow it everywhere, but we have to allow solar by right, manufacturing by right, and R&D by right, one of those three. And so I just want to make sure the town doesn't get in trouble with that.
Just a really quick question on that. If we do have, like, let's say a 1-year moratorium, does that prevent it from being as right, or does that impact it?
That's why I've reached out to some experts in those areas. We have a liaison, Ms. Kelly Brown from DOER, who I think some of you have met. I've reached out to her. We had a discussion. I sent her the language. You know, it's a temporary halt is what a moratorium is. So just being cautious because, you know, we are taking money. What kind of tax revenue do we realize? In FY18, we realized $371,500 in tax revenue. In FY19 predicted total, we would get in $682,000. So there's, you know, 300 some thousand coming in additionally. Okay, and in FY20, if all 25 of these are built out, okay, we have 20 on the ground, we have 5 in process. $951,500. So a little under $1 million in revenue.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Thank you, through the chair.
After.
Thank you. So, the 20 that are currently built, it's my understanding that the land that they're built on is, they're ledges, they're pieces of property where we couldn't viably construct anything else. Is that correct?
I would say that depending upon what you're building, it's a matter of economics.
Okay.
All right, so if you have a ledgy area,
yes,
it's more difficult to construct housing.
Okay.
Because of road infrastructure, basements, that sort of thing.
Correct. Now, the next 5 that are proposed, is the property similar in nature? The property where the solar.
I have not seen the soil reports for these yet. They're in the site plan review phase.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of ledge in Charlton. There's a lot of bony area in Charlton. Some of them are proposed in some farm fields. Some of them are proposed in some woodland areas.
Okay.
So, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was ledge on all of these sites.
Okay.
Mr. Singer?
And just some point of clarification, and then I'll wait for my other comments until Kurt finishes 1 through 11. But just in the very beginning where it says that I said I would provide a list of other towns that put moratoriums on solar, that wasn't the information I said I would research. I think there's been a lot of confusion since those discussions. I had asked for a moratorium on solar. And I was told at the time we couldn't do it. We weren't allowed to. But that's a separate issue. The research I said I was going to do to provide Mr. Meskis wasn't on towns with moratoriums, but on other towns that have implemented restrictions, that have codified, right, the rules for solar farms coming to their town, which we don't have. And we've attempted to put in place in the past, and we have never done. So that was what I was going to research, was the other towns that have actually codified that and what they've done. And I actually have a lot of that at home and did not have time to go home and print it. I have a little bit on my phone, but I have more. I have more at home, but I will share those towns and what they've done for their bylaws with Mr. Meskis.
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
Just, and not to interrupt you, Kurt, but I guess when we were talking, when I was on the planning board, it was by right, and there was no allowance for a moratorium. I guess through research, they have in 2014 or 2015, there was a change, and more for the reasons that we've seen here, that there is you are allowed a moratorium and you can make some exceptions to some of the things. I think when the group who has the citizens petition adds their piece to this, I think we'll be a little bit more educated. But that was my misunderstanding.
No problem. And then, like I said, I'll let Kirk go through his 1 through 11. I have comments on a few of them, but I should let him make them first.
Ms. Noble?
Through the chair, in reading your paper here, which is very, very good, it's a very helpful report. There was one question, it says, what are the cost and impacts to services and government? You say close to none.
I don't think we got there yet.
Okay, so perhaps I'll wait until.
I believe that is the next one.
Okay.
Mr. Swenson?
Garth, this just may be silly on my part. Is it just purely coincidental that most of these ones that we have that are active are along the main roads in town and very visible?
I think the ones that you notice are along main roads in town. I know of a number of them that you probably don't even know that they're there.
Oh, I'm sure that's the case, but looking at this map, there seems to be a majority of them
So-
along the main roads.
So one of the issues with these is three-phase power. Okay, they want to be on a
See, now that
three-phase.
would make sense, yeah.
Three-phase power line, so your
Yep.
major roads.
Are gonna have three-phase already.
power.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's to disperse this electricity back through the grid to
Yep.
customers.
Ms. Meskis, you may continue.
Okay.
Thank you for answering those questions.
So, yes, I said close to none for what are the cost impacts to the services in government. Well, we do a bunch of work in planning and building up front. The assessors do some work in assessing. Debbie, Ms. Ciccarini has a formula that she's been using that's been approved by DOR and everything, so that's how I could get reasonable estimates for stuff that hasn't even been built yet. Police, if there's some sort of accident or vandalism, haven't heard of any. Fire, we haven't responded to any fire calls there. Our most dangerous time for a solar field is during its construction, some industrial accident maybe, someone working there. Certainly, they don't send kids to school. That's pretty obvious. And as far as the rest of government, I could not, the treasurer's and collector's office and accounting has to deal with some bonds and sureties and stuff, and it's, performance bonds that have to be kept track of and stuff like that. So it's, if the performance bond, as Donna told me, Ms. Figueroa told me, if it's $1 or $1 million, it's the same amount of work. So those are what I saw for impacts on the town. Does that?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Are neighboring property values impacted? Well, according to Ms. Ciccarini, no. We did a study back when the Millennium Power Plant was in. I have to disclaim I'm within that zone. The Millennium Power Project offered to appraise our houses in that neighborhood and appraise them a year later and pay us the difference if there had been a decrease in value. It hadn't happened. Ms. Ciccarini also indicated that there were 2 houses nearby, solar fields, that have sold, and she saw no decrease in value. It's a small sampling, but generally the impression I get from the assessing department is that oftentimes this is something that's said about a project, but there seems to be no statistical evidence to back that up, that I'm aware of. How is stormwater impact and runoff? Well, DEP and our Conservation Commission is charged with enforcing some rules with that. Stormwater management says you can't increase the runoff off a property. If there's water running off a property now at a certain rate, you cannot increase it. You don't have to stop it, but you have to channel it and store it and release it no more than the rate it was before.
So do they have like, do some sites have like a Coltech system or whatever to capture
They
the
have
water?
retention basins and swales and stuff. Talking to Mr. Gerard, the DEP looks at these as favorable. You don't have to do catch basins and sumps and all that stuff, which you would have to do in a subdivision or a commercial development. And looks at them pretty favorably, allows them to do some more open swales and natural type things. There again, you know, I'm talking to experts and trying to paraphrase what they're telling me into a report. What happens at the end of service life? They could be decommissioned, they could be replaced, technology could increase. I've seen it over the life of the projects that have been constructed, even before they're even constructed. Panel technology has increased and they says, oh, we don't need 25 acres, we only need 20 acres now because that is gonna produce the same amount of power.
Kurt, is there anything when these, and you may not know the answer to this, are there any kinds of bonds that are put in place to handle, like with the Millennium, to handle decommissioning, should they be?
Planning board, in most cases, has been asking for a decommissioning bond.
They have been?
Yes. I know
You
that
say
the
in most
first-
cases, when would there be a case where they wouldn't?
I just saw one go by, I was not in the hearings, I don't know why they didn't ask for a decommissioning bond, but I did see what do they call it, the determination that came out and it didn't. The first three, which most people look at as two, there was no decommissioning bond for them, I lobbied for it, but the feeling at that time is that people would take the land back, and I didn't agree with that. But
Yeah, but a concern I would have on that is that, you know, in 5, 10, 20 years, whatever it could be, they could have technology that you could have 25 acres worth of solar cells in a plot this big, you know, that is this piece of paper. And people just abandon and walk away from these acres upon acres upon acres of cells that just sit there.
it's certainly a valid point, and I can't force the planning board, you know, to
Understood,
do anything,
understood. But in most cases, they are requiring.
Most cases is a decommissioning.
Okay, thank you.
What options do we have under zoning? Well, we're looking at a petition here for a moratorium. You will have to accept it. Planning board has already set a date. I'm not sure what it is for that hearing. They will make a recommendation to town meeting, and town meeting will vote. In talking to Mr. Scanlon, we're loading up the new planner's plate. We certainly recognize that we need to look at this issue. We are poised in a great place for them. There's a lot of open, you know, I don't want to say marginal, but not optimal land for development into housing or other uses. And there's a lot of it. You know, you look at the town, I had a report run of parcels over 25 acres in Charlton. There are close to 200 parcels over 25 acres. And there's lots of backland. You know, there's lots of woods. So there is potential to affect some changes to the zoning bylaw through the process that may increase setbacks or other regulations on this. A question was asked during one of the meetings, does the maintenance of ground cover have an off-site impact? Well, I was referring to whether or not the purveyors or the owners were using chemicals to treat that. If they were using chemicals, they would have to be using a licensed professional to do that. They're not supposed to be going to the local big box store and buying a certain chemical and spraying it all over the place. And then again, speaking to Mr. Gerard, who has some oversight on some of this through conservation and DEP regulations, most of it's a manual weed whacking. And they're using a grass now that's only supposed to grow to 6 inches tall because they don't want to have to mow acres of stuff. People have asked, you know, funny things you learn when you do this stuff for a living that I do is that goats were looked at. Well, if you've seen the YouTube videos of goats on that
thing there, well, they like to jump on solar panels too, so that didn't
That's
work out real well for them. Why is there so much development in Charlton? Because it's economically viable. It's economically viable for the landowners who are getting some sort of lease payment. It's economically viable for the developers because of incentives. It's economically viable because the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it says that we want to be something like 80-some% carbon-free by 2050. And we want to be 25% less by 2020. So there's stuff out there.
Did you say 0.125% of the town right now? Did I hear that right? Or 1.25? 1.25, thank you.
If you discount almost 8,000 acres for
water. Yeah.
Mr. Singer?
Yeah, so first, I want to thank Kurt for all the work you've done. Absolutely a lot of work to get this to us. I appreciate all the information, and I do know I'm not going to argue. You know a lot more than I do. I will point out, however, that while there may only be 20 today, and we have that much land, that's actually, in and of itself, one of the reasons for concern, one of the reasons for the request for the moratorium, and one of the reasons to start putting on paper actual rules to follow regarding solar farms. So if I were to go through just the 1 through 11 really quick, I'm not going to touch on them all, just a few highlights. Was the moratorium allowed? We were told no, we find out, and we covered that, we found out, okay, so actually you can. The green community designation impacts, yes. It amazes me in any way, shape, or form that solar is considered green and would be even in part of the green community designation, because creating solar is as brown as it gets. And if I go down to 8, end of service life, decommissioning is even dirtier. There's nothing green about making solar, and there's nothing green about disposing of solar after life. And that's not even an opinion, those are just simple facts. Maybe they're green when they're running, but the before and after are very brown. As far as neighboring property values impacted, I would argue that one. I would ask anyone in this room or watching to go to the corner of Richardson's Corner Road and Bay Pass Road. Look at the homes there and look at what they look out their front door upon, and tell me, A, that sure, there's someone who will buy anything. Certainly someone will buy that home, but could they have probably gotten a higher price for it? I would, A, argue yes, and I would also argue that not only price, but even the market for that home, to find a buyer for that home is substantially less because they're looking out their front door on a giant mirror, and it's an eyesore. As far as, wetlands impacted, again, go back to number 6. The state has, it's not a requirement, but a recommendation when it comes to putting in solar farms as far as cutting of trees. And they ask to minimize the impact of trees that are cut. One of these solar farms that we put in that was off of the beaten path, they virtually had to clear cut every tree in there in order to put it in. And what's right down the path from where they literally clear cut every tree out of there, which is certainly not selective, they clear cut, is wetlands. So I'm not sure if that installation's finished yet, but if it is, if it isn't, it certainly could have an impact to the wetlands that are right behind it in the future. We don't know the impact, and not only that, but the wildlife that are in those wetlands, that when that is fully operational, it could be argued that will have an impact when that's done, if it's not done yet. And I'll go right to number 11 as to why there's so much development in Charlton as to be economically viable. I won't argue with you that it's economically viable, but I think one of the main reasons why there's so much development in Charlton is not so much that it's economically viable, because there are a lot of places where it's economically viable, but because it's easy. Because Charlton, we have no rules. In Charlton, you can come in and do what you want. By right, slap it in. 2 years ago, I tried to put together a solar bylaw for the town of Charlton to actually have something codified. I brought it to planning at the time, and the director of planning said, no, he didn't like it because there was too much power, I think, being taken from planning and actually put down on paper as guidelines. So in order to appease planning, I watered it down, until it finally got to the point where the planning director said, okay, I see no reason to oppose this. It got put on the warrant, went to town meeting. As soon as that article came up, the director of planning stood up and said, I oppose this, and got all of his supporters to vote it down. And what was really sad was that that bylaw at the time was watered down so much that all it was asking for was to actually have rules in place that require, so it's no longer at the discretion, but no, it's required, it's a bylaw. Natural barriers, things to protect the view, everything else. And that was shot down. So, you know, it's amazing, we went from an initial bylaw that would have also required this board to have a special permitting process for solar farms over a certain size, which I also found out, I think it was Newburyport, actually has that bylaw in place. It's perfectly legal. We took it from a very restrictive one to the most watered-down version. That failed. So I think looking at this map and seeing the 20 we have here, whatever opinion anyone wants to have on 1 through 11, whether you agree or disagree with me, look at this map, look at what's out there in town, and determine, do you want 20 more, 60 more, or 100 more? Because we got the land for it, no one's gonna argue that. But are we gonna continue to just let it to go in because we have no rules? There are no guidelines. And right now, Charlton is just the easiest picking. For anyone who wants a solar farm, just drop it in.
Ms. Noble?
Thank you for the report. I would much rather be looking at facts and figures than listening to opinions about whether something is an eyesore or not. That's very subjective, David.
It's very
I'm not
subjective,
done
but the
yet.
state rules aren't.
Okay. So, I think, you know, I understand your point about, where is it, property values? But unfortunately, the facts don't support that, and that's what we have to deal with, are the real, actual facts and figures. We can't deal in opinions or what-ifs. We have to deal with what's actually going on. So I think moving forward, if we're looking at a possible one-year moratorium, we need to base that moratorium on the information provided, not on the what-ifs or what might-bes, because that's not accurate.
Mr. Singer?
So the problem with that is, when we talk about what-ifs and what might-bes, is that 2 years ago, we had the same argument. And those what-ifs and what might-bes now are. And they now are because no one wanted to put a moratorium in place, no one wanted to put restrictions in place. I'm not asking about opinions, I'm asking to put in place guidelines that are actually already in place, existing guidelines approved by the state of Massachusetts. That's not opinion, that's a fact. Guidelines that we have for everything else that we do to guide the businesses that come here, what they can do, where they can do it. This is an area for which we have nothing.
Now, I do appreciate this very good discussion. I feel like we're getting a little off topic as we do have a warrant addressing this. And
Right.
also, I don't think we have the answers here tonight, and that's something that's been brought up many times before. So I ask that we either talk about it at the warrant and/or a future agenda item.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions for Mr. Meskis?
Mr. Swenson?
No, I was just gonna bring up the point that you just made. I said, we have this discussion coming up when we talk about the warrant. Let's, but I do appreciate all the work you put into this, Kurt. Thank you.
I understand always that there are divergent views about any subject. I try to, consult the people that I trusted and thank all the department heads and staff in the town hall that helped me with this as I ran around and says, oh, I got another question. It was certainly enlightening to me. That's one of the reasons I take on some of these projects, is because I sort of get to be the answer man, and I like to help. And I think Charlton, in a lot of ways, is dealing with the bylaw that was enacted in 1987, and we went from nothing to something. And I was here at that time, and I sat in town meetings as a young person at that time, listening to people say, don't tell me what to do with my property. And now we're hearing more people saying, well, I want you to tell people what to do with their property, but don't tell me what to do with my property. So there is a balance here of landowners' needs and wants and affordabilities and protection and what the community wants to shape itself in. So thank you all.
Ms. Spiewak,
Thank
do
you,
you want to comment on something?
Just, if I may, again, Karen Spiewak, Osgood Road, and I too appreciate all the work that you've done, Ms. Domeskis. May I ask, because of what the report that was just presented, if we could talk? Because we would stick with the facts, we're not gonna get stuck in the weeds, but I think it's important that.
So
we kind of-
I just
can we
because
pull
of
that
other
out?
things on the agenda, I would like to put it, talk about that during, under old business, under annual town
Okay,
meeting.
but we'll be able to address
Absolutely.
this?
Oh,
'Cause
yeah,
we said we
absolutely.
promise we're
Any
not gonna
facts, we
get
can talk
stuck in the
about it.
weeds, as they say, we will
Right.
address some of the points that he made, and.
Yes.
All right,
Well,
just,
yeah.
thank you.
And I don't want to tell the board or Ms. Spiewak what to do or anything, but procedurally, the function of the board at a petition is to take the petition in, and any discussion about the merits of the petition or the merits of that proposed moratorium is a function of the public hearing at the planning board.
Yes.
And also town meeting as well.
And in our case, though, we are hoping that we can withdraw it and you will sponsor it along with the planning board. But again, that's why it's so important.
Right, thank you. Oh, and, Mr. Meskis, one final thing. Can we please, make sure can we provide this on the town's website? Because this is great information. I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in that, just, somewhere on the site to be accessible.
I can.
Sir?
Sorry, I just have one question or a clarification. You mentioned that the sample size was small on the real estate values. What was the sample size?
It was two.
Two?
Two houses adjacent to solar fields that have been
Thank
sold.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.
Perfect. All right. And our second item under old business is the Board of Selectmen goals and objectives for civic participation with Ms. Grondowski. I would also offer to also have you give your student select person's report as well.
Okay, I'll
So
do
you
the
can
select
get outta
person's
here.
report first. So for the month of March, obviously, we missed a meeting, so I'm gonna be reporting everything that happened within the month. On March 15th were parent-teacher conferences. Also on March 15th, the show choir left and went to the nationally known competition, Fairfield Crystal Classic in Ohio. And the mixed boys and girls group placed 4th out of 9 groups and made finals. And the unisex girls group placed 3rd among about 12 groups. We also won Best Show Design and Best Crew and other various awards. So it was a really good turnout, and you know, it's kind of like the Super Bowl of competitions, and we did really well there. So March 25th was the Winter Percussion Show, and Shepherd Hill placed 2nd in their division, and it was well attended. March 30th, the 3rd quarter grades close, and those are going to become available on April 6th. Our track was also cleared by all the students in the track program, so now it's walkable and runnable, and there's no snow on it. And this week, the NHS will be tapping their newest members, and the induction will take place on April 4th.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions for the student select person?
No,
Mr. Singer?
Just a comment. So, unfortunately to work, I haven't got to go to a lot of show choir competitions this year, but I did get to see Ohio on YouTube. So, I'm relegated to this year having to watch online. But so anyone out there who wants to see, I can talk, see seashells by the seashore, who want to see show choir perform, you can watch online on YouTube, and you can see Fantasy and Illusion. And Ohio was a wonderful performance.
Okay, and the Mocktown meeting, I did share this with Ms. Craver, and by the end of this, after I mention it, if you guys have other commentary, I can share the Google document with you guys too. But I had a meeting with Mr. Desto about it. He wants it to take place sometime between April 3rd and May 12th, and be an hour to an hour and a half long, either at 9 in the morning or at 12:30, and it would be during the school day. So the roles that would be needed would be a moderator, which would have to be one of you guys, the town administrator, which I'm hoping Ms. Craver would play as herself, a board of selectmen where we'd need one actual selectman, and the rest of them would be student volunteers. The finance committee, which I'm hoping my dad will be able to help me with because he's actually on it, so he would go, and then there would be 5 student volunteers. And then the citizens would be the rest of the children, and I would be playing the role of the town council or the lawyer.
Oh, the
So-
expensive one.
Based on that, I'd need 2 of the of you guys, if you were available. If more of you were available during the day, that would be great. It would be at CMS. Certain questions and topics that might be discussed would be a school resource officer at CMS to ensure school safety, senior citizens possibly aiding students with their homework in order to receive reduced taxes, a budget plan and how it should be divided, and then specific to the school would be lunches, certain things about the buses, excessive snow days, fees for sports and activities, class sizes, and added clubs and how they would affect the budget. And at the event, students would either vote by raising their hands or putting up paddles. We haven't decided yet. And after you guys give me your input on it, I'm going to have a meeting with Mr. Desto, Mr. Packard, and a sixth grade teacher willing to advise it, and we'll solidify everything, pick a date and time, and I'll bring that information to you guys.
Thank you. Any comments from the board?
Just one, maybe a couple. I haven't quite gotten there yet. So you're gonna have students as part of the Board of Selectmen and students as part of the Board of Finance?
Yes.
And how are you gonna pick the students to be on those boards?
We haven't discussed that. It would probably be either them raising their hands or them just picking them, or we would ahead of time ask the sixth grade teacher who would be helping organize it, and Mr. Packard, if they had certain students in mind, maybe kids who are on certain boards like the student council or something that they know are responsible enough, and they would do it with us. But I can bring that up.
Have an election.
I wonder if there would be an actual election, but maybe that'll take place another year.
Maybe.
Mr. Singer?
Yeah, no, just, depending on the date, I'd love to either participate or at least go watch. I'm gone April 10th to the 16th, so if before or after that, I'd like to either participate or at least watch this take place.
Yeah, if there's a date that you guys have in mind based upon, like what I told you, April 3rd to May 12th, like at all, just let me know, because it's kind of like all in the air regarding a date, and that's like a month span, so.
End of April? End of April, earlier May, more time to plan, maybe.
Right.
Town meeting, town election.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, that's probably why they're having it then, right in the middle of things.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I know personally, my day availability is hard because of my day job, but knowing a date I can help and try to get some time off.
And I can make myself available.
Okay. Yeah, so offline, I think we'll communicate to see who's available, and give up, if you have any input now, please, if you have any input later, I'm sure we're all just email away.
I have a couple.
For an event like this, we will make ourselves
Yeah.
available.
Okay.
Because what's better than 2 town meetings a year? 3.
You can never have enough.
So I do have a suggestion, if possible, and I certainly could talk to the finance director too, and hopefully some of the selectmen might be able to, if you wanted to, set up a little time ahead of time, so maybe they could meet with the finance committee and the board of selectmen and answer some questions, so that they could just get a little bit of a tutorial. I don't know if you were already planning on providing information to them, or if you wanted that.
Yeah, I
We could
had
do that.
Mr. Desto didn't really talk about anything outside of the event, but I didn't know if we wanted to do like a pamphlet or write-up of some sort, and we would give like contact information for each of you guys and anybody on the finance committee, and we could explain certain, like, in depth of each of the roles and what selectmen do, what town administrator does, or if we wanted to have a Q&A section after it finished. That's all
Even do
stuff we need to
some
determine.
Pairing up of students with
I
each
thought about that too,
selectman.
doing like a buddy type thing,
Yeah.
so each selectman would have a kid who was really interested in it, and then they could keep in contact and ask questions and stuff.
Sounds like fun.
The other thought is if you really wanted to torture the students, you could force them to watch one of our selectmen meetings.
Yeah. Or a
During
town meeting.
detention, or, yeah.
I was gonna say, don't they
town
usually
meeting,
reserve those for detention?
Yes.
I think that's cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah.
Probably is.
Wow.
Sounds exciting to do this.
Thank you.
This is gonna be great.
Yeah,
I think it's gonna be great.
Hopefully it turns into something that happens every year.
Yeah, yeah.
So, thank you, Mr. Gronowski. Appreciate the report and this, and spearheading this idea. So, I'm sure we'll work on it in the future. Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right, item number 3 under old business, annual town meeting. Mr. Kramer?
Yes. You are scheduled to close the annual town meeting warrant tonight. I've prepared a draft warrant for your review. You will finalize the language at your next meeting. If you would like, I can go through the articles you and other boards have requested. Probably because you have so many people here for the petitions, perhaps we could take them out of order and we could do the petitions first.
Mhm. If
And then I
there's no
can go
objections.
some of the other things.
Seeing no objections, I think it's a great idea, thank you.
Yes. So if you go to your last page.
So let's go by order of appearance,
All right,
wherever that is.
so.
Almost last page.
Page
12?
10.
No, 10.
10.
Article 28.
So, 28 is a citizen petition. This is the, Mr. Jennings' petition. He has stated that he would like to wait until the planning board, but it has come in, it had enough signatures. It also came in with 2 maps attached. I contacted them today and they've agreed, they gave me another map, so we're substituting that, so we'll put that map, attach that to the warrant for information so people will see where it is.
And there will be a public hearing on this as well.
Yes. The next one is Article 29. Oh, and we have the moderator just coming in.
Oh.
Hi.
Perfect timing.
Just want to acknowledge she just came in. Article 29 is a citizen petition. It's a proposed moratorium dash non-municipal large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic systems. And you have that language here. It did come in as a petition, and I believe that is the one that Mrs. Speedwack would like to speak to.
So for those 2 articles, Article 28, 29, I would ask that discussions on those will be related to the petition itself and getting on the town meeting warrant.
I think on 28, we're holding for a public hearing, right?
Right, I
That's what-
guess I'm saying
Yeah.
that, not on the specifics of the proposal, but just to get, there's a petition
Okay.
to get on the town meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Is there anyone here to speak on that issue?
On 28?
On 28?
Do they have the required number of
No, I think we
signatures?
already
No,
decided.
no,
Yeah,
yeah.
not to do
well, I'm
28.
saying, we're not
29.
discussing like yes, no, whatever,
No.
it's just that.
It's all set.
It's all
It's
set.
all
Yeah,
set.
If they have
Okay.
their signatures, we're good.
Yeah.
The
they're done.
signatures are here, it is on, and I've already spoken with them about how to do the mapping, so that's done.
And the planning board's having their hearing on the 18th?
I think that's what Mr. Meskis said.
Okay, very good.
I know that some people have a question.
Uh,
I'll be very selective in what I'll allow on the
Through
floor.
the chair.
Mr. Grant.
As much as I appreciate everybody's here on this matter, I think that for the specifics that are going to pertain to the zoning change,
Mhm.
I think that discussion needs to take place at the public hearing.
Correct.
Okay. I think if there's any question
On the
on the article, whether they have achieved their signatures,
Yes.
or if there's an availability of a map, I think those questions can be
Yes.
pertained, but I think that should be the ground rules. I
Yes.
think that the zoning question should be had down at the planning board where the experts are that can explain the zoning, so.
Yes, I think, yeah, it is clarifying what I said. Does
Okay.
anyone have any of those questions? Please come up, please state your name and address for the record, and please make sure it stays on that topic. If it does not, I will have to cut you off.
I just wanted to see if you would be able to.
Please state your name and record, state name and address for the record, please.
Okay, it's Amy Stanley, Sydney Circle, Charlton. I just want to see if we would be able to get a copy of that map. And do we know what's being proposed in order, why the zone changes?
So that question, I don't think it would be appropriate for
Okay,
this.
I just wasn't
But
sure.
a map, is that something that
Certainly.
we can get?
And does this land that's in question, is it still under a cease and desist order?
That's also not on the topic, I'm sorry.
Just one last thing.
Yep.
I have provided you with some information that I wanted to share. This is.
Does it involve this topic? If it doesn't, I would ask you to please submit it to the Board of Selectmen's office.
Okay.
So not as part of this meeting, but we'll take any information you have, but I ask you to give it to us not during a meeting.
It was just specific as far as, I had spoken to the assessor's office
Mhm.
where commercial businesses are located in town. And interesting enough, they're all located on Route 20.
So any specifics on that? I'm sorry, we can't
sorry.
speak tonight, but those are good questions to ask at the
At the public
hearing.
hearing, absolutely.
And we appreciate you coming up and asking questions, but, sure.
Okay, should we just?
Yeah, so I'll just,
We'll just.
yeah, if you
yeah,
just,
the-
yeah,
the whole
if you
thing.
just submit it to our office if you want.
Thank you so much.
No
I'll just take it and we'll.
Thank you, Amy.
Distribute that later. Thank you, Mr. Hanley.
All right.
Any other questions about Article 28? Seeing none, Article 29, I know that one had some questions from earlier.
Article 29 is the moratorium on the solar.
Ms. Buack? Welcome back.
Hi, Lori Gagnon, Osgood Road. I just wanted to clarify or expand upon something Kurt had said, because we are going to want to deal with facts. We're not looking to fight solar, you can't. The state has mandated it. We're just looking, since we have no planner, and in 2014, the state issued model zoning guidelines. We never adopted them. We're looking for some more border, more buffer zones. Right now, I sit at those meetings, and we have no power. We have to kind of say, well, could you put a few trees there? This will say, we'll get into the, the nitty-gritty of it, and that 6-foot, that kind of stuff. So it's just to go through all the little things that we can do to protect our 40.
And I want to expand on that for 1 second. I think the conversation that we had here tonight clearly demonstrates the need to pause and bring everyone to the table and come up with reasonable guidelines. So that's why we're here. We're not anti-solar. We're not, trying to tell people what to do. And we're going to read exactly what it is, to stick to the facts. It's a temporary moratorium so we can put reasonable regulations in place like many other cities and towns across the state have done.
Mr. Swenson?
I want to make that clear.
Obviously, I think we've seen solar explode in this town for a lot of reasons that Kurt outlined a little earlier. There's a lot of reasons why we're getting as much of it as we're getting. I think what we've always tried to do with any kind of business development in this town, is, along with residential development, all types of development, is to have some type of balance and control. And I have to agree that I think a temporary 1-year moratorium, just to sit back and catch our breath, and let's look at the way that the state laws have changed and what authority we do have, and get some control that as these go forward, we can say, fine, under these conditions. Here are the bylaws, here are the guidelines, this is how it has to be done. So I completely support this, and I would, when the time is right, I'd probably like to see this board at least do co-sponsor this with the petitioners.
Yep, one at a time. Ms. Noble? Then Mr. Singer?
Thank you for coming up and speaking. I appreciate that so much. I would agree with you. We do need reasonable regulations to manage any business that comes to town, and solar is absolutely no different. I would have no problem supporting this petition. I wholeheartedly agree that there do need to be guidelines for everyone. Solar's no exception.
So is there a zoning hearing set for this?
They will have to have a hearing at which Ms. Degnan and Ms. Spiewak will present their stuff. Kurt will present his stuff. I plan on going. I'm sure David is going to be there. But I agree also that there is a need, for a moratorium so that we can update what we have for rules and regulations.
So just so I know that there's some talk about withdrawing it and having the Board of Selectmen be the sponsor, about co-sponsoring, about supporting whatever motion would be there. What are the precedents set on that? What are we allowed to do, and what's legally? What legally can we do?
So, through the chair to the town administrator, I think because the petition has been submitted by citizens and it's already on the warrant, I don't think we can co-sponsor the petition, but we can favorably
make recommendations
on it, okay? Otherwise, you would lose, you lose your standing on the warrant, Karen.
I understand. I do believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you do have the power to put your own article tonight, you know, using the similar language, and then on town floor, you're absolutely right, I did my homework. This has to stay on because it's by citizen petition, but if yours was before ours and it passed, then we would simply get up on the floor and say, you know, we table it, we'd like to table or withdraw or whatever. It is allowed.
I don't think
but-
we had any, well, I appreciate the merits of that. I don't think we have any language prepared to
You
put
could
that
use
on
what we
tonight.
have, but we got it right from Sturbridge,
from
and that was,
Sturbridge.
that was passed,
Right.
and went by their attorney.
So I'm not sure if we pass this by our attorney. I would hate to put something in the board, in our name that we didn't vet. And if it's the same as your language, I don't understand why can't we use your language under your petition?
We have your support.
If under, you know, when it says recommended by the Board of Selectmen, and it says
Right,
yes.
but I believe we can still do that. If there's a motion, we can vote to, like, right now, there's no motions on the warrant. Right now, we're just setting that these are the articles that we're talking about and the intent of each article. Come next selectmen's meeting or a little bit afterwards, we'll be voting on the motion that the thing on the town floor, that someone will say, I move that we accept article blah, 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 or accept Mass General Law change or any of that. And that's the motion, and then the various boards will, if applicable, vote to support that motion.
If I may, I believe that with this as a citizen's petition, they don't ask us if we support or don't support it. It's a citizen petition. It's
They
on
haven't
regardless.
asked us. I'm not sure if we're allowed to make that.
What I would like to do is, if we could direct the town administrator to check with town council and see what our options are as ways to support this.
You can take a vote. Generally, because it's a petition and you're not sure about it, you can take a vote to approve, you know, to support, after I check with town council to see if they approve the language.
Mr.
That was
Singer?
the only thing I would
Well,
recommend.
but
that
there's
you
a
would
difference
wait.
between support and approve and support.
Well,
I don't
I
want to
think we've
settle
had that argument
I think
before.
you've used both of them,
Yeah.
but it's where in the town meeting
No,
appropriate input.
I understand all that, but I would like, David, you're rubbing off on me. I would like to see us do something a little bit more than just the standard Board of Selectmen supports the motion, or supports the article, or whatever it is. I'd like to see something a little more than that.
Mr. Singer?
I also am in favor of this. One question or a suggestion or a thought, why couldn't we duplicate using their language? Just as they could table, you know, we could move, but we could, you know, do the same with ours, but then we have both options on the table. And, you know, we then have it on the warrant, and it's there, so we can find out from town council what our options are, or what the best way to go is. If we find out that we couldn't support theirs, but we have ours on it, that we could vote to support ours, and if we don't go with ours, because we go with theirs, we just move over ours as well.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Noble?
The only question I would have about using language from another town is, I don't know if this other town has been designated as a green community, and I want to protect the town.
So, through the chair, we actually, thank you for bringing that up, because it's an important thing that we looked at. And I know Ms. Damascus mentioned the percentage, what was it? Who was paying attention?
1.25?
Well, very good,
1.25%
you get the gold star.
on
But,
non-water.
so now, we want to just put it a little bit in perspective, Mrs.
Yes,
Singer.
I totaled up what Kurt had said. So we currently have 20 large-scale ground-mounted solar systems here, 5 more coming. And we have a lot of land, and more is coming, so I totaled it up. We have over 77 megawatts in town.
So I appreciate
No,
the.
this
This
is
is a
going, this is really,
statistic
this is
and
very
this is a fact.
important.
Yeah,
very
so
important.
that's involving the merits of it. I think
No.
we're talking about
No,
the
it's-
logistics of who's sponsoring what and who can
But
sponsor
with all
what.
due respect, this is a very important statistic, because it really puts things in perspective if.
Why we need it.
If you
Right.
just would let her finish that one.
So the percent, we have over 77 megawatts here in town. In the state of Massachusetts, solar goal is 400 megawatts by the year 2020. We have 351 cities and towns in Charlton. So Charlton alone has nearly 20% of the state's goal of solar power. We have been the low-lying fruit, and that's a huge statistic there. And recently, they've doubled their goal, and they've added more money into that fund.
Right.
So it's going to get
worse.
Right.
So
I don't
we just
think-
wanted to put it in perspective.
Right, and
Yeah.
there's four selectmen who've already expressed that they are supporting this.
Yeah, but that
I
was
see that,
important
but
too.
yeah.
I wanted it over the air.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Craver?
So, two questions, and I don't want to sound like a skunk at a garden party, but two questions that I have that I could anticipate happening, and especially if you're talking about doing some language. One, this doesn't say who's doing this, it's just putting a one-year moratorium. So there's no direction of who's actually even going to do this. So this could essentially pass, and we get it to the year, and who's done it? Is it planning board? So that's one piece. The other piece is, if this doesn't pass, are we still able to look at the issues and come back with those changes in October? Do you need a one-year moratorium? Because I guess that there's two pieces that I'm trying to get at what you're trying to accomplish here, and
So, Mr. McGrath?
A time out.
Through the chair.
who's gonna do it?
Normally, the planning board would take the lead on this through the town planner, depending on where we are in that, because the change to the zoning bylaw, there has to be hearings and stuff. You can change your zoning bylaws at the special, the special annual town meeting that we hold in, September, October. You can do those, you wouldn't need a moratorium. It depends on how many changes you're trying to do. You're gonna have to hold a public hearing on them,
I just have another question too, and I see Peter's in the back, the chairman of the planning board. Of those 5 that are coming on, have they already submitted plans, and will they be exempt from this? If that's because that's what I'm hearing you're saying is you wanna stop?
I would assume they'd be able to go
I think
forward.
they're-
We're not, again, we're not trying
Mr.
to.
Ms. Scanlon, if you can please come on up, if you can answer those questions to the microphone.
And Bill, you tried to stay away from
Yeah.
the microphone tonight.
So we're kind of getting into some of the content and the merits.
Right, which I just
of
wanted.
the article, but
yeah.
to answer the question, the moratorium is a building permit moratorium. So the building commissioner cannot issue a building permit for a solar project once that goes into effect for a one-year period. But applicants could submit plans and get through the site plan approval process so that they would be ready to submit the building permit application when the moratorium expires.
But what if the town changed any zoning requirements or site plan requirements during that time? Would they be exempt from it because they would be grandfathered in?
The application will be governed at what the zoning is in effect at the time they submitted their
Okay.
plans.
So it won't actually be a moratorium for them submitting plans?
Correct.
Okay.
Do you mean they could submit plans all through the whole year, but they just have to wait until the end of the year?
Yes, as I understand it, the article prevents the building commissioner from issuing a building permit for a solar project. But it doesn't prevent the planning board from reviewing the site plan and giving it approval.
Mr. Singer?
Just 2 quick points. Ms. Noel mentioned, green status and everything else. We have the ability to be flexible even if we put our own article on a warrant today. So we have options at our disposal, one of which is we could table our own article. We could just move on and skip it. 2, if the article was on using their verbiage, and we found from town council or something else between now and town meeting that something had to be changed, I don't know how many times we've seen articles amended from the floor. So we could make an amendment to our own article at that time so that it would suit those needs, and then basically on the fly correct it.
As long as it's within the scope of the article that's
Yep.
put together, that's all,
Yep.
just a reminder.
Well,
Right.
as I
Mr.
understand
Scanlon?
it, as a petition article, the planning board in the public hearing process cannot tweak the article. But certainly town meeting has the ability to act as it sees fit, provided it's within the parameters of the existing article.
Right. And obviously, this board does not want to do anything that, is in the purview of the planning board, because usually, as Mr. McGrath said, it's the planning board's, they take the lead on this. We don't want to say, oh, board, let's take it over, and we'll take the charge.
Yeah, correct, and that's exactly the thought in mind, that if we did have this in place and something came up, in order to make it legal, we could change the verbiage or the wording in it without changing the meaning of it, right? Or anything, but just to make sure that it did fit within the state's guidelines, we could make that change right on the floor.
And it seems like one of the only reasons to change it from this citizen position to the Board of Selectmen sponsor position is that the perception of more support. And personally, am I in support of a moratorium? Yes. So it seems 5 selectmen who are in favor of that. But it seems like it's something that's almost unnecessary to effectuate what you want. That makes sense.
My opinion would be that this is a perfectly legitimate way to submit a zoning article.
Yeah.
It's allowed by state law, and they followed proper procedures. As signatures have been certified by the town clerk. So I don't see the need for the planning board to, remove that petition and submit their own article. I think
Right.
the way it's going forward is
And
fine.
that's the same with the Board of Selectmen as well.
Right.
SBY?
Yeah, I did want to address something Mrs. Craver said earlier, because, again, this would be totally up to all of you, but I envision when this passes, that a committee is formed with all the stakeholders, and the conversation happens to make sure they're reasonable guidelines, much like the Government Study Committee was advisory, and they came back with their recommendations. And the last thing I would respectfully ask from each and every one of you, regardless of what you have to do or legally you're bound to do, if you would just go on record, take a vote, and say you are right tonight in favor of this temporary moratorium, because it does. You're the leaders of the town. People pay attention. It matters.
But
Often citizens' petitions are viewed as hostile. This is not
Right.
hostile. We're trying to do this collaboratively. And another reason why we had suggested that you sponsor or you take the lead is you have access to town council.
Right.
We do not.
So we can still utilize that and help you develop motions and back-end things on this. We can, as Mr. Swenson said, and I think asked Madam Moderator about, is that we can still vote when we do our motions. This is when we typically vote for support on how you want to approach an article. And you heard each one of us tonight say that we were in favor of a moratorium.
So, through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
So Karen, what happens is, the procedure is tonight, we close this, okay? We don't vote on supporting the articles for the whole warrant until before the town meeting, okay? Usually the night of, I believe, correct? Or sometimes it's like,
usually
maybe the meeting before.
Unless there's information we need.
And the reason for that is in case town council changes some verbiage in the article itself. So I think what you witnessed tonight is that all 5 members of the Board of Selectmen are in favor of this. And I'm just speaking for myself. When it comes to time to discuss this, okay, at town meeting, I will be discussing it and why I'm in favor of it. And I'm sure that the rest of the rest of the board members are gonna do the same.
Right.
So I think you're gonna have the whole full-throated support of the Board of Selectmen on this. Go ahead.
No, John can finish.
And, that's, I think that, you're in good shape.
Mr. Singer?
So, Mr. Chair, I still would like us to have our own article on the warrant sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. And if it has to be done by a motion, then I would make the motion to have the Board of Selectmen put on an identical article on the warrant to theirs. We could always table it, but to have it on there, Plan B, if necessary, it's there if we need to utilize it. We don't have to act on it that day, but if we don't do it today, we're not putting it on it later. So I would make a motion that the Board of Selectmen put on a duplicate article sponsored by us.
I have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion second, discussion. I'm not in favor of this. I think what we have here, a petition, like Mrs. Scanlon said, is a very valid way, and it's a way that we can also support in a very public fashion. And I think we have enough resources to either support this, and worst case scenario, we pass over it.
So,
Mr. McGrath?
Just, can we discuss this for a second?
Sure.
I think maybe this is the belt and suspenders approach to this. We do this and we could pass it by town council and see what we have to do.
That would be, in seconding, that would be my goal, that's what I was gonna say. I'd just
Yeah.
like to run the language by town council, see what is the concept, and see what he has to say on it. I do agree with Karen and Laura that I do think it has some weight if it's a Board of Selectmen article. And that's my reason for supporting it. I do believe it has more weight and would warrant more, could warrant more consideration
Through the chair.
than a citizen
Ms. Noble?
petition.
Personally, I find a citizen's petition to have more weight than something coming from us, because it comes from the people of the town, not from the 5 individuals sitting up here. I find your petition to have far more weight than anything that we could put forward. Certainly, we'll support it. To have a duplicate would be a waste of time. I don't see any reason to, certainly our attorney can look at their language, yes, Robin? So why would we duplicate their efforts? Their efforts are stellar. And there just seems to be no reason to have a duplication of efforts. I'm not aware of the belt and suspenders analogy, but it just doesn't seem to make much sense to me.
Mr. Singer?
So, I agree with Ms. Noble in that the citizens petition has a lot more power, I think, and weight than this board. I think that all the power lies with the residents of the town. One of my reasons for wanting to, or 2 of my reasons are for wanting to have a selectmen's version of it. A is, it was the petitioner's request, and I have respect for them. If they feel more comfortable with that, I'd like to honor that request. And number 2, from a procedural standpoint, if we were to find out later for whatever reason, Board of Selectmen does not, support or comment on, because I know historically, we've had other articles put forward by other people, and this board has not commented one way or the other because it was not sponsored by us. So I would just, as a precaution, want to have it on there. Like I said, there's no extra work. We're just putting it's almost a placeholder, but with wording. We can always pass over our own article, but if something were to come up later that we found out we cannot do what we thought we could do regarding their article, we would have this as that plan B.
Just another opinion on this, is that I still feel it's inappropriate for the Board of Selectmen versus the Planning Board, whereas this feels like this is in the Planning Board's wheelhouse.
We're hoping they do that, they want to support it too. Again, it's a
Right.
collaborative effort, and,
Right.
and if I may,
yeah.
through the chair, it's, for me, for us, it's about the legal part of it, you can use Councilor Cosgrove and
Right.
make sure the language is legal, and I appreciate what you said, Ms. Noble, about more weight. But honestly, I think if we come out together, or one stands up and says, this is what happened here, and this is why we're tabling that, I go back to, I understand and agree to a point, but I really would appreciate, we really would appreciate it if you would move forward with the motion that you have on the table to sponsor, to be the sponsor of the article for all the reasons stated.
And just another comment on, not being able to use legal counsel, if we went with your petition, we still can. We can, we can, and it seems like we would be willing to still come at it as a partner, so. Mr. Swenson?
And my last comment. Ms. Noble, I agree that in theory, citizens' petitions should have more weight than what this board does. And I don't have any facts to back this up, but just gut feel over many years of doing this. I've seen more citizen petitions fail than succeed. It is only 10 signatures to get a citizen petition on. And I would, part of me would like to think that, yes, citizens petition, it's the will of the people, it's done, it's what we want, it gets done. But unfortunately, just my gut feel is that it doesn't always work that way.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Ms. Craver?
My understanding is the motion is to take the exact wording
And make it Article 23?
and make it another article before that, sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. I guess my question to Karen would be, would it be helpful if the Board of Selectmen were to take a vote to support put a placeholder? Because then we have 2 weeks to work on the language. Because I'm hearing what the board is in favor of this, there's just some questions about the legal piece. To check with Cosgrove, to also have a conversation of whether or not they might want to add some language in yours that identifies maybe identifies a advisory committee who would be set up as part of this, that they would kind of like what you said with the government. I'm just concerned that if this happens, that there's no action steps next. So if you wanted to change your motion to a placeholder, let me work with Cosgrove, let me work with Karen.
So, a question.
So that might be, that's another option, I'm just letting you know.
A question on that.
And with the planning board and ask them what their
Yeah,
belief, their
Thank you.
part is. Because, you know, I do believe that the reason it hasn't been done yet is I don't know that the planning board felt that it was necessary, because from what I remember hearing, they thought that there was enough latitude, but, you know, perhaps we could find out where they think that there might be some pieces, and it could be a kind of,
So do we have to close the warrant tonight? Is that something that can wait 2 weeks?
well, I think I would recommend that you close the warrant tonight, and then you put a placeholder on for a solar moratorium to look at some reasonable zoning changes, if you want to do that. And that way, you also have the ability, if there's some deficiencies in the petition, I can have a chance we can work with town council to come up with something that would work better.
So, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Singer?
So, I'm fine with that. My concern and why I wanted to copy their language was I was under the impression that once we closed that warrant, that was it. You know, we've had placeholders prior, and then it was usually filled when we closed the warrant. Now we're gonna close a warrant with a blank spot on it. It's just a placeholder, which is, well, I'm just saying, which is why during our discussion earlier, it was pointed out and everyone agreed to put that on, and if town council found deficiencies, we could then make an amendment from the floor so that it would fit town council's preferred language. But if you're saying that we can just put a blank spot on that town meeting warrant, close the warrant and go to town meeting with a blank warrant and just fill it in on that day?
No, that's not it. Generally, when I come to you at this time, when you close the warrant, you only have a list. I don't even give you the language half of the time because we're still in putting it. So what we come forward is saying, what is it that you want? Here's the house things, planning board, personnel board is working on a classification, okay, we put a placeholder for that, and then I continue to work with them on the language. So it's not necessarily a whole, what it is saying you wanna put a placeholder for a solar, article, and then I have to bring that language back to you in 2 weeks, because that's when you vote on the exact language, and it gets posted right after that. So that's the piece that gets posted and tells the townspeople about what you're gonna be talking about. And then we'll start to work on the motions within that framework. But I also, you know, and you have the moderator sitting here, and I believe you've been the moderator for a while, you need to make sure that that warning in the warrant article is reasonable notification to the citizens as to what you may be changing thereto and thereof. So it's gotta still be within the scope of the article.
Correct, and if we amended it from the floor, it could still be within the scope of the article. My only concern is if I don't want to just put on a blank, you know, line in there for a placeholder, and then find out later that, well, they don't wanna do this, or so-and-so doesn't wanna do this, when we have the opportunity tonight to actually put an article on there.
Right, but it seems like we still have the opportunity at our next meeting. Mr. Swanson?
If we could, we can vote to put in a placeholder, and at the same time direct the town administrator to work with town council to develop the language for the warrant articles and present it back to us in 2 weeks.
And to even start with this language.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So then I would amend my motion to that.
Oh,
Lori has a
Yep.
question.
Sorry,
ma'am?
Mr. Chair.
If you can speak right into the mic, please.
Will this affect the hearings that are coming up if we don't have the article written?
Well,
Oh, yes, sorry.
Well,
That was a very good point. I'm
This
not sure.
article has been timely submitted, so the planning board can go ahead and hold a public hearing. We're anticipating an April 25th public hearing on the citizens petition. So we can hold a hearing on the article that you're suggesting anytime before town meeting.
okay, so we can still, if we develop it, we vote in the next meeting to confirm that's what we want, we talk to town council, you can still hold a hearing on that.
Yes.
So I would amend my motion.
And I'll amend the second.
Just amend a motion, amend a second
So the
to,
worst place is that yours would go through and they wouldn't.
right.
And my only request is that you adhere to the language,
Mhm.
if you can.
Yeah.
And maybe just put in the language regarding the appointing of the committee. I'm worried about intent, I'm worried about things changing. You know, you take one word out, you put one word in, the whole thing changes. So, and
Right.
that's really my concern. So if we could adhere to the language, that'd be great. I'm asking all of you to please adhere to the language.
We can't, to be honest,
too.
Karen, as much as I support this,
I
we
know.
can't say we'll adhere to
Well,
the language.
you know the intent.
We'll adhere as close as we can to the intent.
Yes.
If we put it through town council and he comes back and says, you have to, I
Right,
recommend these
right.
verbiage
I get it.
changes, then we're gonna go for those.
But it seems like we're all arguing very passionately, but we're
Yeah.
all on the same page,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so.
Great, well, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for this lengthy discussion.
So we have a motion and a
Thank
second
Yep.
amendment on the floor to create a 30th article for a proposed moratorium on photovoltaic systems.
It will,
It'll go before the
it will go
petition.
before all
Okay.
the petitions.
Oh, 30th, not number 30, but another article, and direct the town meeting, town administrator to talk to town council about developing language for it. So making a placeholder.
Based on the language submitted by the petitioners.
Correct. Is everyone in agreement with that?
Yep.
All right, is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The other 27 articles.
We're good.
Ms. Greer? You know, we've had time to review the rest of these articles. They've been brought before and spoken about. We ask you tonight, consider closing the town meeting warrant as presented with the additional article and placeholder.
I move that we close the town meeting warrant with the addition of the previously discussed placeholder.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion, Ms. Craver?
I'd like to at least read them, so if you have any questions or
Okay.
anyone,
Yep.
just think, because I might have put one here you don't know about.
Are you
So I
gonna,
wanna
are
be
you gonna
careful.
read everything or just the title?
Just the titles.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, if any
So
selections
we have to
before-
know we work on the warrant for 3 months and
Yeah.
then 2 weeks before, slip one in?
This has been a work in progress. I can't tell you how many times I've printed it today.
I can imagine.
But if anyone has any questions on one of the articles, please feel free to ask.
Okay, so, the first ones are housekeeping, so I'm just gonna read them straight
Yeah.
through and stop me if you have a question. So you've got your election warrant, article, this is where your question will be for the ballot about, and the question says, shall the acceptance by the town of Charlton, chapter 31, section 48 of the general bylaws with reference to the office of the chief of police, which placed the office of the chief of police under civil service, be revoked? So yes or a no. This is taking the chief out of civil service, which was a request of Mr. Singer. Article 2 is town reports. Article 3 is litigation. Article 4 is appropriation of funds for unpaid bills of a prior fiscal year. Article 5 is intra-departmental transfers for FY18. Article 6 is town budget. Article 7 is the water budget, and 8 is the sewer budget. Article 9 is transfer of funds to and from the stabilization fund account. Article 10 is capital items and related contracts. Article 11 is cemetery perpetual care. Article 12 is police outside detail. This is where we had talked about that we have about $100,000 we need to supplement. Article 13 is personnel bylaw amendment classification plan. The planning board met today and will be giving me the language for that. I do have language in there, but that may change, some of the language may change. Article 14 is special legislation to allow for alternate conservation commission members. Article 15 is the board committees stipends, and I'm gonna add to that board commissions. Just to catch all. Article 16 is acceptance of pregnant workers. Now, that's gonna have to have some work. It's actually the act for pregnant workers.
Yeah, we support pregnant workers.
Act. So I'll have the exact wording in that. Under 17, it's the water betterment interest refund. As you know, some residents came forward and asked about returning the interest for their water betterments. Article 18 is reauthorization of revolving funds. And actually, if I can go back to 17, I do need some direction on that. So if you could go to
Do you want to go through
17.
Do you want to go through all the rest before I go back to that?
I can do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
while we're on a roll.
All right, water betterment, so let me just hold that out. Reauthorization of the revolving funds, Article 19 is a new public safety building for design and land purchase. Article 20 is authorizes selectmen for on behalf of the town to repair town-owned South Charlton Reservoir Dam, to assess betterments, etc., and to appropriate funds for same. Article 21 is a bylaw amendment allowing the Board of Selectmen to grant public utilities easements. This came about because of Article 22, 23, and 24, which at this point, you don't have the ability, we have to go to town meeting anytime we give an easement on town property.
Huh.
This is only town property
this
we're
would-
talking?
Only town property. So this would be public, and it would be limited to public utilities easements. So the Board of Selectmen would be able to do that by bylaw. Then the Article 22 is to grant an easement to National Grid for a anchor and guy for the Union Cemetery, Sturbridge. That's a pole that needs to be anchored, but it needs to be anchored on town property. Article 23 is an easement to National Grid for underground utilities at the police station for the cell tower. Article 24 is acquisition of easements needed for the Potter Village road, bridge repair, and reconstruction. So if we give one or get one, we need to go to town meeting. Article 25 is acceptance of Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 110A, office hours on Saturday. Article 26 is acceptance of Blackwell Drive, formerly known as Elaine Drive. This was on our last town meeting, but they didn't get all the paperwork in and asked to resubmit. Article 27 is a recreational marijuana zoning amendment, and I believe in your last page you have this. Anyway, the planning board did give it to me today, so I will insert that, but it was after this was printed. And then you have 2 citizen petitions. So
And then our now.
what I will
Yeah.
add in is 28 will be yours. And then I'll switch them around so that yours and then the solar follows yours, and then I will move the 28 down to be last, if that's okay. So you're 2, do you mind? Good, okay. So
So
let me
our-
go back to
17?
So, someone said I was starting trouble. Water betterment interest. So this says to see if the town will vote to, 1, reimburse interest payments for water betterments committed October 15, 2013, and 2, to decide who shall be eligible. A, only those whose water was contaminated, or instead B, all those who had betterments reimbursed, or take any other action. The reason I asked for direction on that is that the board had talked about that you felt that anybody who had contamination should be held harmless and paid back. Now, there are properties that are not in any contamination areas that have had a betterment, that have actually gotten their betterment paid for, but they did pay interest. So, and that was the way they chose to finance. So my question is, does this board want to just pay everybody the interest, or do you want to just recommend that the interest is for those who had contaminated to keep them whole? The difference is $100,000. It's $100,000 estimate, $100,000 versus $25,000.
What are the wishes of the board?
My gut feel on this is if someone paid interest, they should get their money back. I know it's $100,000 we're looking at, I get that. But I think, in my own personal opinion, it goes beyond the money.
I agree with Rick. We talked about this when we were doing the negotiations with Mobile Exxon. We wanted it to be a zero sum.
People should be held harmless.
For everybody.
If they're not contaminated now, what about the
They
contamination?
pay the interest.
Yeah.
If we give them back interest, we give them back their interest.
And they could end up being contaminated later.
Then, yeah.
It's even beyond that, Rick. It's the fact that if Mobile Exxon hadn't contaminated the property, we wouldn't have had to run a water line, and they'd all still be on their wells. So,
Mr. Singer?
So, I agree, but I will point out that someone's not being held harmless. So, we don't want these people who, through no fault of their own, had to bear that cost and would like to get their money back. The town then gives their money back, we're not gonna get it back, which means that that amount is now actually being borne by every taxpayer in the town to a smaller degree. We're not getting the money back.
no, because
We'll
when
get
we
our
did the
interest back?
settlement, with Mobile Exxon, and I'll defer to the town administrator, what was the amount of money that we got?
The settlement negotiations, when we were negotiating about how much the water cost, we only did the actual cost, we did not factor in the interest.
But there's other money
There-
involved there.
there
We're,
is
we are,
But money, as we discussed before, though, money that comes from other areas for other projects that now has to go toward, I'm not saying don't do it, I'm just saying the reality
Yeah,
is,
but
that money has to be
that's not,
redirected.
that is not the case. We had what I'm gonna call beer money in the Mobile Exxon deal. Am I right, Rick?
A little bit of beer money. There's
Right.
a little bit of beer money, but, and again, just my own opinion is, beyond the fund where it comes from, I believe it's just the right thing to do.
Right, so I said, I'm not
Yeah,
arguing
no,
with you
I
about doing it,
understand that.
but-
There is, now, we had to, in the Mobile Exxon negotiations, every penny was negotiated tooth and nail by them. I mean, there was no, here's a bag with an extra
No.
$100,000 in it. That is far from the case. But there's so many line items and so many dollar sets and so many moving figures in that I don't see this difference the same as going to the taxpayers and saying, we're dumping another $75,000 on your tax burden. I don't see that.
So, but the reality is still that $100,000 isn't beer money. $20 is beer money. $100,000, I'm just saying,
When you were dealing with Mobile Exxon.
When it was a $30
beer
million
money. When it's a
settlement.
$30 million
And
settlement, it
when
was
you're
beer
building
money.
infrastructure and doing research and test wells, 100,000 is a lot of money. So, but the reality is, it's there, we're not going to recoup it. We're just, the end effect is, we're simply spreading it out, instead of amongst a smaller group of people, we're spreading the cost of that interest out amongst a larger group of people.
Do you want a motion on that?
If the consensus of the board is that you would like to reimburse everyone, I will change the language out for the choice and then just make it simple, straight.
Yeah, and we'll just
Reimburse.
accept or support the warrant article with that language.
Okay.
Yes,
So-
right,
so-
that's
so-
the direction I needed, whether or not you wanted to split those hairs.
And the townspeople get to speak on this, so.
Exactly.
If they don't want the
Yeah.
funds to be returned to
Well,
them, certainly they can say so.
They can tell their fellow citizens what they think.
Like I said, I'm not arguing.
Oh, I know.
Right.
To do or
It's
not
a
to
good
do.
point. It's a good point.
It's just a view of where the money comes from and where it goes.
Mhm.
Okay. So then, we have the warrant with the articles, with the grammatical changes, and as Gary pointed out, with the additional article that we agreed on tonight, the shuffling, and anything by town council.
So there will be some changes as we're still going through.
Mm-hmm.
And I will have the exact language for you because you will need to sign it at your next.
Right.
So if you have any questions or concerns about any of the language, please let me know, or if you have further direction.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion to close the warrant? Seeing none, we'll go for a vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Warrant is closed.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All right, with that, does anyone have any annual town meeting business? All right, we'll move to committee reports. Does anyone have any committee reports?
I'll have some questions when we support the articles. Save them for that.
No committee reports? Thank you. Town administrator's report? Ms. Kramer?
Yes, sir. Regarding Potter Village Bridge update, residents have inquired as to an update on the status of Potter Village Bridge. Highway Superintendent Foskett has stated that we're at a 95% design plan, has been submitted to Mass DOT for approval. They are currently working out an easement agreement with 2 abutters to the project. The bid package is being put together to go out to bid, hopefully on the 1st of April, and they are hoping to begin construction in June. Regarding the facilities technician, Lucas Baudet, our facilities technician for the town hall, started on Monday, March 5th, 2018. I'd like to thank all the departments for their understanding and assistance with their office needs during the absence of this position. I'd also like to commend Kurt Meskis and the Highway Department for their assistance in stepping up and helping when needed. Preambulation of the town boundaries. Staff has been working diligently to gather all the information that can be found on the prelimination. I said it right the first time.
You got it once, you're covered.
Of the town boundaries, as the board has asked. A binder has been made with all of the surrounding towns of Charlton's boundary walks information. We will be bringing this to you at your next meeting with recommended dates for walking the boundaries. Once the dates are set, we will invite the other towns to join. Community Resilience Building Workshop. In light of the recent destruction due to extreme weather across the state, it's imperative that the town of Charlton assess its vulnerabilities regarding events such as flooding, drought, ice storms, hurricanes, heat waves, and cold snaps. We have prepared for disasters by developing processes for opening community shelters and wellness checks. As you know, we have received the MVP grant to take a more concentrated look at planning for natural disasters, and we'll be holding a workshop Saturday, April 7th, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Senior Center. This workshop will include department heads, boards, committees, local businesses, and residents. We will identify areas of concern and how to mitigate potential damaging effects. We invite all residents to participate in this discussion as there may be geographical areas of concern particular to some neighborhoods. Also, doing this work will enable us to apply for future grants that will help fund the strategies to protect the town. Under the MVP grant, we have a consultant that will be facilitating the discussion, and again, hope everyone can attend. We plan to report the results at the all boards and committees meeting on April 17th. We will provide snacks and lunch. Community members are encouraged to contact our office and RSVP so we can have an accurate lunch count. WRTA, the board appointed Bob Howard to the WRTA in my place. Mr. Howard has hit the ground running on this. He's already contacted our state reps due to the cuts. We could be losing our bus that have been taking place in transportation. I'm happy to have him on board, and we will keep you updated with any changes. Water line installation. I'm pleased to report that Mass DEP has received and approved the WS 32 permit application for the installation of 19,500 linear feet of 6-inch and 8-inch water mains in Berry Corner Road, Eleanor Road, and H Foot Road in Charlton. The installation also includes 2 pressure-reducing valves, fire hydrants, and individual house connections. Regarding the Railroad Pond Dam, we have been advised by Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation that we are co-owners of the Railroad Pond Dam. Conservation agent Todd Gerard will be reviewing what is required for the dam and also contact the co-owner. We will keep you updated with what the town's responsibilities are. This dam is located under Old Spencer Road. The portion belonging to the town was taken by tax title on October 11th, 1996. And lastly, Healthwise Marijuana. We have been advised that Healthwise will be holding a community cannabis meeting as required by the Cannabis Control Commission's regulation before they can submit an application for recreational marijuana. As you know, the board negotiated terms in its host agreement in the event that they expanded to recreation sales. The hearing will be held at a Charlton Marijuana Advisory Committee meeting on April 5th. at 5:30 PM in the Board of Health meeting room. It will be published in the local newspaper, and we encourage anyone who's interested to attend.
Thank you, Mr. Creever. Are there any questions for the town administrator? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other business unknown at the time of posting? Sir?
Good evening. Russ Jennings, 47 Jennings Road. I have a letter I'd like to read to you this evening. It's from myself. I have copies for all of the board if you'd like those.
What does this letter concern?
Well, I'll read it to you. On
What does it concern?
concerns the zoning violation.
I don't think this is the correct form for
Well,
that.
it's not so much the violation itself, it's the person who hasn't acted on the violation. Who does the zoning enforcement officer report?
Mr. Jennings, also,
Sure.
it's just that also because of the ongoing litigation involved.
This has nothing to do
Through the
with
chair.
litigation.
Yeah,
This
Mr.
is a
McGrath?
total separate matter.
Yeah, through the chair. Well, so without reading the letter, what I'm gonna guess is that a citizen has forwarded a complaint to to the zoning enforcement officer.
Absolutely.
And the citizen is saying that there has been no action taken.
Yep.
Okay, so with that being said, and not going into the particulars, through the chair, could I please ask the town administrator to work with Mr. Jennings and Mr. Meskis, the zoning enforcement officer, to find out the status of this and to let us know what's going on. I think that's the proper way to do this.
Well, and that's why I wrote the letter, I mean.
Right. And I would also
It's been
ask you
60
to
days,
submit
so-
that to our individual inboxes as well.
Yeah,
Sure.
okay.
Well, could he certainly,
Yeah, you can
Could
get
you
it
Robin
to us.
right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
okay, you can submit it right now.
Thanks, Russ.
Well, I made copies for everyone, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
guys are more than welcome.
So,
Okay, I will contact Russ and Kurt and take a look at what this is about.
thank you, Ms. Graver.
If I could, be placed on the next agenda so that we could discuss this matter. And maybe you can-
Seeing where it goes with the discussion between yourself, Ms. Graver, and the commissioner, we could entertain that.
At what time?
When,
I'll advise you
Yeah.
after I meet with them.
yeah, not knowing the appropriate actions, I don't want to put one on the agenda, but absolutely we'll, if it calls for it, we'll have you on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Russ.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Is there any other business unknown at the time of posting? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
I make a motion, we enter executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Number 1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health, rather than the professional competence of an individual, or discuss the discipline or dismissal of or complaints or charges against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. Involuntary disability. Number 2, to conduct strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel contract. Number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation for Casella, Hickman, 508, Gordon, Lemansky. And number 6, to consider purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate, water negotiations. If the chair declares an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and to return to open session for any other business.
Second.
Thank you. A motion and a second. The chair does declare that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and we will anticipate to return to public open session, correct?
No, sir.
All right, so we'll be exiting executive session solely for the purpose of adjournment. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go by roll call vote. Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Ms. Noble?
Aye.
Mr. Swenson?
Aye.
Mr. Singer?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're now in executive session at 9:43 PM. Our next regular selectmen's meeting will be April 10th. We'll see you next time. Have a good night.